What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Nightmares Podcast, where we talk about all things horror. We talk about movies, music, entertainment, podcasting, and also maybe some creepypastas as well, because I'm extremely fascinated by that. And guess what? All those things I've listed, our guest has actually been involved in all of them. So we have the fantastic Raz here today. If you would, so awesome to introduce yourself and what you are all about.
I am Raz T slasher, and if it is horror, it is me. That's just my life. That's what it is. I mean, all the things he mentioned, I've done. I was also a horror wrestler. I did music business for a decade, and did quite a bit of horror music on top of grunge. Literally, it's just been my life since birth. My mom was a special effects artist for like super indie film in Ohio. Took me on my first set when I was about 3 because we couldn't afford a babysitter, and I fell in love with it. She taught me how to be my first severed head when I was about 8 or 9. The special effects, I didn't go out killing people. I mean, that I'm going to admit on a show anyway. So, but yeah, it stuck with me, man. I mean, I even do live storytelling events and stuff. I'm a professional storyteller as well. So that's what my whole life has been. I can't imagine doing anything but horror.
The Renaissance man of horror. You got all your bases covered. So typically, and then of course I have my partner in crime, Mr. Zachary Smith here.
Yes, with my really dark camera settings, because none of us know how to work a camera.
No, we weren't gifted with those gifts. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Gotta be dark, man. It's horror. It's gotta be.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
You throw a green light on in the background somewhere, darker green lights. Monster light.
I'll fix it in post.
And he is allowed to say that actually. Nobody else but him. So you kind of already went into it, but one of our famous questions here on the Nightmares Podcast is to, when did horror enter your life? And you kind of went into it a little bit more, but I want to hear even more detail. Obviously, growing up with a mom who does effects, and then also too is what were some of the movies and cultural events and shows and pieces of art that influenced you and made you the Renaissance man you are today?
Man. First of all, my mom is nuts, which is my favorite thing about my mother. She is crazy, but in a fun way. Like there used to be a show back in the day called Leave It to Beaver. I'm sure you guys have at least heard of it, if not seen some old episodes. Imagine the mother, June Cleaver, on Ativan, and that's pretty much my mom. Like one moment she's making you a sandwich, and the next moment she'll be serious, or you think she is, and she's like, "What do you think the perfect way to rob a bank would be?" Just because I'm curious. And then she would sit you down and work through the whole plan with you and tell you why it was bad for like 2 or 3 hours, and then it was over. And then you just went about your day.
No. Hold on. Some people call that weird. I call that teaching critical thinking.
That's the way it came to be over time, and that's part of why I guess I am who I am, and I torment my children. But it was just, that's what I grew up with, man. Horror, like critical thinking questions like that. Just strange stuff. But she is literally the sweetest woman. It has never not supported me for a moment of my life. So I mean, it's just that I don't know. It was just a really free world we grew up in, back then. And I was born in '82. No one cared about kids in the '80s, man, and most of the '90s either. So we got away with everything. I remember she took me to the library that I always went to. I was at that time 6 years old, and she goes to the library and she's like, "You see my son here?" We're like, "Yeah, he's here all the time. He can rent from the adult section now. Don't question him." And the lady's like horrified, and my mom's like, "Listen." She explained, our background, our family, what we were into, and rules and regulations. And she's like, and also, I just got him a really nice dictionary for Christmas, and it was like one of the ones that like the huge, giant, like gilded page dictionary. And I was not allowed to ask her what anything meant. If I needed to know a word, if it was too adult of a book, that's why she gave me the dictionary. I was allowed to ask for context only. So I learned just as much about the writing world as I did the horror world, the film world, all in the same go. Plus, my grandmother was also a storyteller. And I grew up starting at ages 2 or 3 listening to her orate stories and she would never tell you if they were real or not, ever. So to this day, even though she's passed, I still don't know which things were real and which weren't, other than that some of them were. No idea. It's part of the mystery.
Nice. I love that.
But it was the same way at the local video stores. It's, I know my son is young, but, put it on record. He's going to walk here by himself. You're just going to run in whenever the hell he wants. So there were no rules, and music was pretty much the same way. Just whatever you want to do to be creative, you do it, enjoy it, understand that everything has a context. If you don't know that context, ask questions, go research it at the library that you love so much. So that was my whole life, is just kind of figuring it out, figuring out why I liked horror, what worked about it. And the bottom line is this, guys. Horror is the oldest genre in the world. I'm actually working on a master's degree, which is going to be turning into a doctorate for creative writing and literature, but it's all centered around small town horror, urban legends, and more modern creepypasta type stuff. The very first story ever told likely was either in cave paintings or around a fire where someone was warning you about a danger nearby. That's horror. Horror at its finest is everyday life. It's real things that happen at some point in time, most likely in some form or another, to teach us a healthy respect of fear. I don't know about you guys, but when I drive at night, sometimes I glance into the back seat to make sure there's nobody there. And it's weird little gestures like this that horror is pre-programmed into our daily lives so thoroughly, we don't even notice it anymore. It's the most integral thing to our existence every day. And I think that above all is why horror for me, and all these things my mom did for us growing up was just, it's what cemented it. And like realizing that even earlier, like young, when I was, having all this access and everything being put into context for me was, I can't imagine a life now where that doesn't exist, and it's not everywhere.
And perhaps that's the reason why that horror fans, because obviously we're big fans of the community. We love going to cons, love talking to people, obviously, and really getting to know and making great, solid friendships and business partners. And the funny thing is, and I've fallen in love with a girl who's probably even more of a horror fan than I am. Nice. She's the quickest one to. I'm the film geek that goes to all the genres. She's the one who like, I'm gonna pop in a comedy or a horror. And the crazy part is, it's maybe that's the reason why that all these people are the nicest, most well-adjusted, friendliest and welcoming people, is because they've already conquered their demons through horror, and they've had them, and you've had an interesting perspective, and I hope to teach my kids, if I'm lucky enough someday, this philosophy is, I don't want my kids to react to a world that it should be. I want them to be prepared for the world that it is. And and
the term "my kids" you can use liberally, man. Like, so I'm actually a stepfather. We just don't like that word. It's we don't like it. I'm dad. It's what it is, and I'm happy. I love that. And I'm an uncle, an actual blood uncle to many kids that are my kids, and I'm just the friend of many people that have children that are also my kids, because I get to help, raise them. The haunt kids, the haunt that I work for, there's going to be kids all around you, man. And you get the cool opportunity to sit them down and be like, hey, man, check this out. Learn this.
Yeah, and it's a bonding experience. I think there's something very interesting about when human beings. The reason why human beings don't like necessarily danger is because of the consequences of danger. But if they can be in an environment where there's danger but there's no consequences, it could be a very, very cathartic and very enjoyable and entertaining experience. People enjoy horror movies for the same reason they fucking enjoy roller coasters. It's the same. It's the same dopamine hit in their brains. And it's so interesting to talk to people like you and like Zach, who you don't know this, but Zach was introduced to horror when he was 2. Zach, what's your lineage?
So Schwarzenegger movies and slasher movies. My grandfather showed me all the cool Schwarzenegger, Stallone movies, Terminator, Predator. Fucking Schwarzenegger's my goddamn hero. And then my mother, essentially the same thing as you. I was watching Freddy, Jason, and Pinhead at the age of 2. The first slasher movie that I remember was Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I vividly remember that as my very first slasher movie. And, it followed up with Jason, because, if you're going to watch Nightmare, you may as well watch Friday the 13th. Also, fun fact, I'm born on the same day as Jason, so me and him have a little personal connection.
I got to show you something, man.
Ooh.
Oh, what we got? Nice.
Okay, yeah.
That was that's my 13th tattoo. Got it on a Friday the 13th for $13 just a couple years ago.
Love it. Fucking love it. Actually, I did not put the camera up. Could you show that tattoo one more time? I was too distracted. It's a little grainy, but the audience will be able to make it out.
Yeah, I love it. I fucking love it.
Yeah, dude. Fucking,
I see got your Hellraiser right there behind you too, and I actually have. I'm not going to pull my shirt off, but over my heart, like the full scale size, it took 16 hours of work. I did it all. Had him do it in just one day with like a half an hour break in between. The whole box, man, details and everything.
Oh, that's so fucking beautiful, man.
That's fucking fantastic. So when you were early on, you know, what were some of the first couple movies or TV shows that you were introduced to? You know, obviously storytelling was always a big part of yours, and those are great too. I mean, I grew up, you know, listening to scary stories about death coming to actually, you know what? I'm going to tell a quick story because I've never told it on this. This is actually an old family story. This is actually my great grandfather when he was a child, and my family's from Grand and Western in Chicago. Very, very tight knit Italian community, surrounded by a giant Puerto Rican community. It's always interesting, well, Latin based, but it was the middle of winter. And in Chicago they have a back door, and they have the kitchen right there, and then they have the front room with the front door over here. And my grandmother was my great grandmother was sitting with my great grandfather when he was a kid, and saying, and doing dinner and everything else. And a man dressed in all black walked into the back door and then looked inside and said, "Oh, excuse me, I have the wrong place," and then closed the door. And she thought it was his father, and he was kind of a drunk, and he partied a little bit, as people did in the 30s and 20s. Oh, yeah. And she said, "Go get your father," and everything else. So he opened up the door, and as he was opening up the back door, the front door opened up, and it was his father walking in through the front door. And he looked outside, and there were no snow prints at all, and this man was gone. The next day, they found out that the man upstairs, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, the man upstairs passed away. And they think it was death. Death had just walked into the wrong apartment, said sorry, and then walked upstairs and got the person he was supposed to get.
That is epic. That's an epic story, man.
Yeah. And then the famous one in our family is called the Black Hand. It was about a black hand that literally reached over a fence and tried to open it up. And no one could ever identify who the black fan was. My nana thought that the older kids were fucking with my younger aunts, and she actually went in and said, went out to them and busted them up and said, "Hey, show me your gloves. I want to see your hands. And undo your pockets. I want to see if you have a black glove." None of them had any black glove, and they had no knowledge of what it was. It was just some creepy hand that tried to come over and open up a fence. It was probably some crazy bum or something that was trying to in, but it's a very creepy story. It's famous. Oh, yeah. It's famous in the whole thing called the Black Hand. And the crazy part was, after they told that story that night, and Zach's met a lot of my family that night, the one of the kids had traced their hand on a piece of paper, and all the adults were telling the story later on, and then like several hours had passed, and they're all playing cards, and they're telling the story, and my one uncle's very superstitious. He's started getting to creep out, and he literally like put his cards down to fold. And he's like, it's like, "Oh shit, what's this?" And it was a bunch of pieces of paper. He turned over the paper, and it was a black hand that had been traced by one of the little kids. And he's like, "Fuck it, I'm out." And he literally left and went home.
That is right there, man.
I got an Italian family. They're very fucking superstitious, and like a lot of superstitions.
I am actually Sicilian and Cherokee. I get the superstition like insanity.
Wow.
My family doesn't know whether to smoke with someone or shoot them in the face. Like there's that total, like the back and forth.
That's that, and I'm Irish and Italian, so I drink a lot and eat a lot, and I'm into everybody's business. And you and I can joke about how that you're not really Italian, you're Sicilian, and that shit that goes back and forth between.
That's a difference.
That is a difference. My family, I might as well though. My great great grandfather was from Calabria, so I'm south, and then my great great grandmother was from Lucca, so I got a little bit of money and a little bit of gangster. But anyway, that's neither.
We were mostly Romani that then went eventually and just had sex with everyone else in the world too, and then landed in America, and then Ohio for some reason.
Yeah, we had a lot of Italians. Dean Martin's from Steubenville. So it happens. But anyway, so what were some of the movies that influenced you, and you got into very early and really made it a profound effect on you as a kid?
Being born in '82, and the first film I saw, I was 2. Also, it was the summer right before I turned 3, and it was Texas Chainsaw. Of course, it had been out for a little bit. It was it had just recently hit video actually when I saw it. Video was barely even a thing then, guys. Like my family finally got a VCR, and the first thing we actually owned was Ghostbusters.
Nice.
Like that was the first VHS thing my family had was Ghostbusters. But we picked up Texas Chainsaw. We rented it from somewhere and watched it, and I was enthralled. Now I had seen horror before. I knew what it was mostly, but my very limited understanding was that was my uncle or someone that my parents knew in a costume, because that's how it was explained to me, because it was my uncle in one movie my mom was doing, and it was people that they knew that I had seen in the family. So I just assumed it was something they did. I didn't know that what I was supposed to be watching, I guess. So my mom was a little disturbed at first because I'm jumping up and down cheering with a chainsaw, and she's what do you think is happening here? I was like, well, I think Uncle Jerry is about to get that lady. And she's like, that's not your uncle. I was like, wait, what? And then I was shocked for a minute, and then I realized, but this is a movie. You guys, you make movies. Yeah, but we didn't make this. And then for some reason, then it was real, because mom and family they weren't who made it. Then now it was real, and then I took it seriously. And then I was like, well, what else is there? More or less, in my very limited, way of speaking back then. And it became everything, man. And I remember she did not want me to watch Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th at first because of the nudity content. That was the only thing she was worried about. She didn't care about the language, the violence. I just hadn't seen a lot of that yet. So she would, watch things beforehand, or she'd watch them with my cousin. But me and my brother would sneak behind the couch.
Of course.
We would crawl behind the couch when they thought we were playing in our room, and we would watch entire movies without them knowing it until after we would make a sound or a peep. But I have to think that after the second or third time at best that we made a peep when they caught us after the movie was over, that all the millions of times that happened after that, they had to have known, and they just let us think that we were getting away with shit is what I think it was. Because there's no way. You don't hear kids giggling behind the couch and or gasping or freaking out. There's just no way.
Yeah, that was me growing up with my
Chainsaw Man.
Oh yeah, dude, it's fantastic. That was me and my stepbrother growing up with Celebrity Deathmatch on MTV. They and pretending to fall asleep in the living room and then turning it on, after the fact. It was fucking great.
And Marilyn Manson is still the crowned champion of Celebrity Deathmatch, the only celebrity to have won 4 matches and to have never died during a match. Actually.
I'm sure that there was some inside deal that was done there.
Probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably.
For sure. For sure.
Oh yeah.
But no, I love that. I love that you had that kind of upbringing. It's so weird, about that. I guess as an adult, I find that peculiar about how, as Americans, I guess I'm more European with this philosophy, and I was talking about it in the last podcast about violence versus watching nudity. It always made me laugh how we're just so okay with just the most gratuitous violence, but we're not okay with boobs. The
other way in Europe, yeah.
Yeah, it's just very strange to me why that is. I don't know if you had.
Let me tell you, they say if you've seen one pair of boobs, you've seen them all. Coming from someone that did music for a decade and has been all the places I've done, all the industries, and worked in the medical profession, that is true. Boobs are fantastic, but they're just boobs. There's nothing. They may seem magical, but there is truly nothing life-altering or magical about it.
was that joke by
Ron? Said that out loud on your show before.
No. What's that joke by Ron White and everything else? They may all look the same, but I want to see all of them.
Oh yeah, that does not stop me from appreciating, but I don't also get America's issue, with nudity. It's just not that big of a deal. It seems like it's a big deal because people make it a big deal. It's just not.
Our buddy Dennis is so professional with that and everything else. It's like it's just body parts. And he makes it, when when we interviewed with him, like he's the guy who would make like giant monster dicks and like for movies and stuff. And like,
Oh yeah.
and when we were in his studio and I'm like, oh look, there's 4 jackasses and 1 professional. They sitting there playing fucking lightsabers with the goddamn purple monster dick. They
What else are you supposed to do with them if they're sitting there? I mean, you fight with them, man. That's what you do.
That's what boys do. That's just what we do. We play lightsabers
I've
with
known
penises.
plenty of females in the horror industry also that will pick up that dick and swing it at you, man. Like, in the horror industry, if there's giant prop dicks, I don't care who you are or how old you are. I've seen it happen from children all the way up to people in their 70s and 80s. I've seen them pick up that dick and swing it at someone.
Dude, I'm pretty sure Dennis has to keep those under lock and chain if he ever brings them on set.
Oh yeah, dude! Like, cause too many people want to play with them. It's just like I want to swing the giant penis too. Everybody becomes 8 years old at that point.
Oh, yeah. It's just now that is magical. That is truly magical. Just a giant thing that you can just swing around and hit people with. It's like Nerf, but better.
Giant purple veiny dicks bringing people together since the creation of silicone.
I'm just imagining Nerf like the new line of adult toys. Nerf or nothing.
Would you like to go all the way? Sit here like come up with dirty slogans for Nerf. They
have the Starship Troopers Clint Dathu special. Would you like to know more?
I would always like to know more.
My favorite taglines of all time. Would you like to know more?
We do it to each other all the time. All the fucking time. Oh yeah, dude. Some of the it's amazing how quotable horror movies can be sometimes, dude. I quote from Dusk Till Dawn has my favorite horror quote, and if not my favorite, and I'm a cinephile, man. I have a lot of quotes in my head. But like that quote and everything else. What were they? Psychos? Psychos do not explode when sunlight hits them. I don't give a fuck how crazy they are. It's still to this day one of my favorite lines. And then I think Zach's is definitely from like Tremors 2. So
it's definitely one of my favorite quotes. I was denied critical need to know information. I am completely out of ammo. That's never happened to me before. I fucking love Bert so goddamn much. The second one is such a great movie.
Oh, it's so much fun.
I remember the first time that Bruce Campbell ever uttered, "Good, bad, I'm the guy with the gun."
Oh.
That moment as a child changed my fucking life, man. Because you don't think about like good and evil in terms of that when you're a kid, especially even watching horror, and you got to watch things like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like when you're young, like back in the day, or my favorite film of all time, Nightbreed, to really understand that there's a difference between good and evil, but it's not what you think it is. And then later, for the kids that grew up after my generation, you had Harry Potter that taught you all this. I'm a big Potter fan too, by the way. Got a Harry Potter tattoo. I'm not ashamed at all. I love Harry Potter. Just not the people necessarily that it's connected to, but I love the story. And but you learn from all these things. And it's from pop culture that we learn that it's just shades of gray, man. It's down to individual decisions at individual times, and anybody could be great one minute and terrible the next, vice versa. And it's really cool to think about it in terms of that, though. Like it's a different level to everything because things aren't as nice and pretty as you think they are in the real world. In the real world.
It's true, and then you can learn a lot from horror. I mean, one of my favorite horror movies of all time, in my top 3 actually, is Reanimator, and nothing's gonna be more and more complex and more weird and more he dances that line between evil, neutral, evil, good. Like he plays like hopscotch with that little square box. It's crazy.
Oh, it's really fortuitous that you mentioned that because in one of my classes right now, we had to have this long drawn-out conversation. And it's a master's class, so we're, of a certain age, we're allowed to go a little bit farther and push boundaries. And it was about, we had to start a discussion and write a mini paper on how we felt about them removing the bust of H.P. Lovecraft as the award for speculative fiction. Because of obviously the same reasons, the racism, a lot of the issues he had as a human being.
Yeah.
And my entire argument is, why? when you make art, it is meant to be bigger than you. It takes many people. Even H.P. Lovecraft had an editor. He had people that put out his work. I can give you a million examples all day. The most hot button issue still right now, Jeepers Creepers. It's the same thing.
So
someone did something truly terrible, but there's so many other people involved in a project. Do you punish every single person involved for this one person, even though they did something very truly undeniably terrible? Or do you realize that art is supposed to be bigger than one person?
Oh, it's always
supposed to be bigger than you the moment it's out of your hands. And that was my entire argument. It was a lot more succinct and probably sounded a lot nicer than what I just said. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it was. I think we also talked about, like, Johnny Depp, Marilyn Manson, just a lot of other big things like that. But it was all about, where do we draw that line as humans? Do we agree that art is art? Or do we agree that we only like the art created by every single person we agree with? And then what art do we have left?
And also, too, more importantly, I have a fun podcast story to tell you about that topic with Jeepers Creepers. But where's the line?
Oh, yeah.
Like, if we're going to really talk about this, okay, so where do we go from, like, if you want to be that person who, and if I was in this class, I would bring up this point. If you want to be that person who says, well, I can't separate the artist from the art, it should all be banned. Okay, so where's the line? So we start with awful people that have done awful things. Let's take the Jeepers Creepers example, but then let's go to the next step. Let's go into authors that are where it was commonplace to think certain things of their time. They were people of their time, and they thought certain things, and they had certain philosophies, and we're judging them by our standards and not by the standards of them. And then also too is then it becomes a slippery slope into, well, I disagree with that person in whatever fashion, so I'm going to deny their all art. If you start going down that road, you'll literally eliminate probably all art. And also too is, you've also eliminated the possibility of any type of critical thinking. So now you're just going to say that I'm only going to watch things that I agree with. Then how are you going to grow and learn as a human being? And how are you going to develop critical thinking things? You know what? By the way, too, is perfect example. They Live. Scathing thing of capitalism. I'm a big capitalist. Real capitalism, no, not crony, but real. Like, gotcha. I think it's one of the biggest, and this is as far as I'm going to get into any kind of that direction. But
of course.
But I'm a big proponent. I grew up. My father worked for Merrill Lynch at 23. He owns a small business. He's been very successful. All of the people in my life, I'm running a small business essentially. I'm in sales and everything else. I think that's the American dream. Are there problems? Fuck yeah, there's problems. And I'm not a big fan of major corporations. At all. I'm not a fan of oligarchies of that kind of caliber. But I believe in this process. Love that fucking movie. That movie is a very anti-capitalistic movie, but
it's in my top 5 movies of all time.
But you know what though? It's so much more than that. It's about being invaded by culture and having your entire life essence be wrapped up in economics. You know what? Somebody had a great quote. It said, "Money's like oxygen. You need it, but there's only so much of it that you can have." So. And also too is it's so much more of a cultural thing of materialism and how you're feeling a void in order to be happy. It's so much more than that. But I don't agree with everything, and I certainly don't agree all with John Carpenter and all his philosophy. Sometimes I think he's a curmudgeon fucking old man who's bitter about how he isn't accepted by the regular elites half the time. But that being said, he's a brilliant filmmaker. He said some brilliant things, and also too is he's best friends with Kurt Russell, who completely disagrees with him on so many things, but they're
publicly,
they're tight as fuck. So it really comes down to a situation of, okay, you want to go down that path of separating, of combining the art. Where does it end? Where does it end for you on this scale? Do we get rid of the people that are the monsters? Great. Then we don't watch any more Miramax movies. The Good Will Hunting's down the fucking tubes.
Actually, just take every major production studio since the beginning of the time and throw them all out, because there are cases for major execs from every single one of them, every television network, all the ones they've been sold to. Even Disney has had its issues.
Fuck yeah, dude. Don't get him started.
There's dicks on castles. That's all I'm going to say about that.
We're also massive Star Wars fans, so we have our problems.
Same.
But again though, and then how far does it go down the line within the creative process? Do you blame the fucking caterer? Do you blame all the grips and the electric? I mean, this is the problem with art and culture right now. Is everybody wants to be so fucking pissed off all the time and blame everything that they're never going to grow as individuals within the lens of art, and art's never going to be able to expand into different ideas because there's some ridiculous people out there that want to just be angry all the time about everything. Yeah. And
we were in a multi-decade renaissance in art, especially in film, man. And what happened? The 2000s hit, and some of the greatest film I've seen all went underground. It went to your local cinema that maybe played indie films like once a month, or straight to video from all these companies that you've never even heard of that produced movies. Movies were great. I mean, look at how Blumhouse started. Sure. Jason Blum started with just about nothing and built a name, and now of course he's Hollywood. He's big time now, but still produces a lot of next to nothing budget films because he remembers his roots.
Exactly.
And then you got people like Peter Jackson that made Lord of the Rings and now is better than everyone, which still pisses me off, by the way, because I remember where that man came from. I remember the horror projects that man came from, and they were terrible but brilliant.
And weird fucking horror too, weird, some weird shit.
Have you seen Meet the Feebles?
The Feebles, I don't know. Remember which one?
We haven't seen Meet the Feebles, but we watched Bad Taste.
Yeah.
That movie
was fucking something.
That movie was great.
Have you ever seen the original Muppet Show TV show?
Yeah, of course.
Imagine that with sex, drugs, guns, snuff films, and STDs, and that is Meet the Feebles with the puppets. It is the weirdest and most fucked up thing involving puppets that's ever been made. Even Team America World Police has nothing on Meet the Feebles by far, and it is the strangest thing that he ever did in his whole life, or I think will ever do. It'll ruin you and change you all at the same time.
It truly is amazing where Peter Jackson started and where he is now. I remember there was a story that during the premiere of Lord of the Rings, I guess they had posters of his older films like Bad Taste, Meet the Feebles, and the executives look at it and we gave this man what?
How much money?
And he's doing what? It all turned out to be fine in the end. They walked out with a huge. They're just like, oh, thank fucking God. But
that could have gone very different.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how power can go to somebody's head. I find that truly. I think one of the biggest examples. Actually, no, I don't know if that's an example. I don't know. I was gonna say James Cameron because I look at where he started.
It is
Terminator.
South Park
Aliens.
is right about James Cameron.
Yeah. I fucking love that song. The greatest that song. That will forever be my favorite episode of. I have that as my ringtone. I love it so. It's so fucking funny. I wanted to get the limited edition vinyl release.
Dude, and Raz, dude, you should have been on some of these fucking jokes that we're making. Oh man, we would make fun of him all the time. James, what the fuck are you doing down there? What are you doing down there in the ocean and everything else? It's I need some more money to build Rapture. I mean, film Avatar 2. I was like, I fucking knew what you were doing down there, you piece of shit.
I wish he was building Rapture. That's way more interesting than fucking Avatar.
Yeah, that's actually probably true.
When you decide to call an ore that you cannot possibly obtain unobtainium, you have lost me for life. That was the laziest piece of writing I've seen in any film ever. And I've seen Troll 2 at least 7 or 8 times. So I feel like I have a really good finger on the pulse of what's bad.
Oh man,
it truly upsets me because I considered him to be one of the greatest. Actually, no, he is one of the greatest filmmakers
in the 80s,
ever.
I thought he was too.
Yeah. Terminator 1, Terminator 2, Aliens, Abyss, True Lies. I love all his fucking movies. The only one I haven't seen is Piranha and Avatar 2. I remember I watched Avatar and I was just like, this isn't a bad movie. It's just not for me. It's visually great. Yeah, Titanic. I rewatched that recently. I'm like, this is not a movie I should like.
Watching that around my family or around any other normal human beings because when that movie first came out, I went in theaters with this girl I was dating at the time who was very into the whole story of the Titanic, or at least she was when she found out the movie was coming, because I'd never heard her say a word about the Titanic before then. But I had to take her on a date to see it. She demanded that. I'm like, okay, I don't want to sit for like a damn near 3-hour movie about a ship that sinks and people die at the end because I know the story. It's, it happened before. I think I know what's going to happen at the end. So she went, so I take her to see it. And I'm not gonna lie, I smoked a lot before I went to that movie. I was not going in sober. And I'm sitting there in the seats the whole time going, yep, well, this didn't happen historically. That's bullshit. I don't know where that came from. And then the very end happens. And this is how I lost that girlfriend that night. Everybody starts to die. The shit tilts. And you hear swoosh, 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 ping. The bodies are just flying down, hitting that propeller, and it makes that ping sound. I started laughing. I lost my shit. I don't know why. And in the moment, that was hilarious, and I still find it hilarious. I died laughing. And I'm looking around, like, realizing that I'm the asshole because no one else is laughing. But then I get a closer look at some of the faces of the guys around me there with dates. They're there going, they're like laughing. Even a couple of the females in the area realize when they're trying not to laugh. Yeah. She got pissed. And funny. Then I think it was about an hour after I dropped her home, because she had to go home right after the movie suddenly. About an hour later, I got a phone call to end the relationship because I didn't take her passion serious.
Wow, that's so funny. That
which is also the weirdest breakup story that I think I've ever had in my life.
Dude, that's amazing.
That is fucking amazing. So I always want to
watch it, think about that. Think about that moment. Try not to laugh. I dare you.
Oh well, now I won't be able to unsee that. I just remember like we were making fun of it. Like I want to do a deep fake like from that scene of Wolf of Wall Street when Rob Reiner comes in with the bill. Like I wanted him to like freak out and everything else. Like like James Cameron's the only dude who could probably press the random button on Amazon and whatever pops out. There's a $20,000 for fucking smoke machines. What the hell are you doing with $20,000 for smoke machines?
Holy shit! Give me a couple broken fans from a thrift store and like 20 pounds of dry ice. I will do the same shit.
What the fuck are you doing over there? You're filming a Goosebumps episode? I remember there's an episode where they're in a camp. Like we watch Goosebumps for fun and make fun of it.
Werewolf of Fever Swamp.
Thank you. And then literally, there's a bunch of the folks, and I remember like it was silent, but we were all snickering. And I turned to them and I'm like, I wonder if the director came on set and he's like, 20 more smoke machines, otherwise I walk.
Probably.
So egregious.
Probably.
Anyway, just really quickly, it was really back to Jeepers Creepers for just a second. We actually did a podcast on it, talking about it, and I remember it was really weird. It was kind of very eerie. We were talking about it. We are getting very, kind of emotional about it. It was definitely a high take thing, and it kept getting darker and darker in the room. There was a thunderstorm rolling in.
Oh God!
I have this very distinct memory, and I'm like, this is weird. Like something like somebody knows we're talking about this shit. It's and then just
the whole vibe.
Yeah, the whole vibe. It was just very strange how just it was a very nice summer day when we started the podcast, and then it just rolled in as we were getting darker and darker. Because I remember one of our old partners was actually reading the shit about like what happened, and I was like, this is like super fucking dark, and I love the movie. I love 1 and 2, and I refuse to watch 3 because of all the things I've been told about it.
Is 3 still better than 4?
I heard the new one is hot garbage.
Please don't. Let's pretend it didn't exist. I would rather watch 3 about 100 more times. At least 3 did some things that were interesting that I liked, whereas the new one was just interesting setup that got ruined about 15 minutes in. I'll say that.
That's the most brutal
cool
review.
That's the
And I'm not usually an asshole about movies, but like I really like Jeepers Creepers. I was a big fan of the whole concept, and they have a beautiful setup. Louisiana Whorehound is over there for the first time when usually they're in an Ohio thing and a little bit in Indiana, and it could not have been a cooler setup. It was gorgeous. And then the makeup that they did, it looked like a rubber mask and not makeup. It was really bad, and I did not even see a high definition copy because I refused to.
That's tragic.
And then the story fell apart so quick, man. Whereas 3 was just super low budget, and they cheesed out and cut corners, but it had a cool story.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And this is all from an idea that he stole from Unsolved Mysteries. This whole thing got made out of Unsolved Mysteries.
That's amazing.
I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but it's one of the.
I had no idea.
There is an actual episode of Unsolved Mysteries. I think it's season 1, where there is a mysterious person that's going. There's all these there's people disappearing, and it's tied to this vehicle that's got a license plate that says "Be Eating You" on it, and that's where he got the whole concept for the license plate. And he said, "What if?" and spun this whole story and became Jeepers Creepers.
Okay. Okay. So I can almost even appreciate that.
I actually love that about it. I mean,
yeah.
hell, Matthew McConaughey got his start on Unsolved Mysteries. So.
It's true.
Shirley Gardner, #1, I think, was his first role.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And also his illustrious history with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series.
You mean the very movie he has tried to get stricken from his record and IMDb since the day it came out officially? Him and Renee Zellweger both has campaigned to remove that from their filmography.
He needs to get over it,
it's
man.
It's such a fun movie. Why would you want to get Oh my God, I had such a fun time watching that one. It was hilarious.
His character Vilmer was actually a pretty good addition to the Sawyer family. Honestly, he was fun. He was interesting. I like the remote controls, like working his legs. I actually thought it was cool, man. I mean, Renee Zellweger, yeah, I can see why maybe she wouldn't want to remember that movie. She was not good in it, but he was fantastic.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
That's fucking hilarious. Anyway, all right. So as you're developing and everything else, I want to see. Obviously, in horror, people are fans of horror, but they don't always take it into an artistic direction. Obviously, you have a family lineage and everything else, but I'm very curious. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. Sometimes family, they see the struggles that the family is going through with the artistic endeavors, and they go, you know what, that's not really for me. I'll be a fan, but it's not really for me. But but people do make a conscious choice eventually to go, you know what, I want to do something, in the artistic field, and I want to take my passion of horror within it. So I want to talk about what that was for you, when you made that switch, and and talk about why you wanted to go down that road.
So it's weird because I'm the only one that did. Like, out of my family, it was me and Mom. Really? And of course, Grandma. My dad was staunchly against all of this. He was 6'2", about 350 pounds, huge guy, the kind of guy like you would not want to meet in a dark alley. But horror films terrified him. We don't know why. We never understood it. Like, nothing scared this man. He faced down a bear and stood there and didn't move, didn't freak out, just went about his business and went back to fishing afterwards. But a horror film, fiction, don't know what it was. But he was, anything artistic I ever did, he was against it. His whole side of the family, completely against it, other than his brother, who did some film stuff with my mom. My sister, she liked haunts. She thought, a little film work when we were young. She's like a vet tech now, man. Like, she just completely dropped art by the time she was 18. My brother, he's passed away. He ended up always being into music with me, but then he left for the military, came back, passed away. But he was more military family and that sort of base. And then all my cousins, none of them ever got into any of it. So I'm trying to now pass that on, of course, to my kids, and their significant others. And my daughter and her boyfriend that lives with us, they work at the haunt with me. So I've gotten to train them in the whole haunt industry these last 3 years, almost 4 now. So I'm getting to do all these things with them now. But for me, it just clicked, man. And the more access I got to all those things, the movies, the writing, the art, the music, just everything, man. And especially the storytelling more than anything. I really think that it was my grandmother and the storytelling and the release of the most important piece of storytelling to ever exist. I was alive when Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark came out. And going from my mother or my grandmother telling these actually believable stories to these ones that were obviously a little more childish based on what I've been hearing, but still so immersive, and to watch multiple come out and then immediately the cassette tapes right after. It was just this powerful feeling that I could close my eyes and listen to the story. And I'm not even using my sight, just my mind and my ears. And I'm feeling something. I'm feeling emotion. I'm feeling tension. It's so well described. I think I can smell it. I think I can taste what they're talking about, even though there's obviously no way I could. It's just sense memories. It just triggers all these things. And all someone is doing is talking to me as I'm listening to these tapes, or I'm listening to my grandmother or whatever. And it was that feeling, which also led me to music. Believe it, honestly, a big part of music is I can close my eyes and feel it. That's a good song. I don't even care if I don't like the genre. It's a good song. And horror just snuck up on me more and more and more. And that storytelling aspect of it that just put me there, even more than film ever could, was what made it real. It's where I understood why I needed to check the back seat of my car when I got old enough to drive. It's why I peeked in the closet or underneath the bed. Not that I thought was anything was down there, but just in case. And it was always, but just in case, let me do this. There's a spooky sound. I should go check that out. But just in case, I should probably take something with me, or the dog, or I should probably not do that alone. And I just, again, Young saw how much all those things from the storytelling affected my life over time. And I just couldn't imagine not being a proponent for that, not getting out there and pointing out to people like, hey, your life, how you live it right now, all your concerns, all your fears, and even some of the things that you love. That's because of a movie you watched. Chances are it was probably a horror film too.
Nice.
So to me, that's my way of getting out there. And with my storytelling specifically and my writing, more than any of the rest of it, that's how I'm adding to the next generation of people that come, with my kids or, their kids on down the line. There's all these artifacts that we want to leave behind so they get it, that they understand, which leads me to creepypasta. And that is what my generation left behind for the next generation. And it may not seem that way because creepypasta, let's be honest, Slenderman was a big part of creepypasta.
Yep.
You've got Jeff Killer. I mean, there's so many classics, right? Let me just tell you that I'm 40. A lot of those people that wrote all that stuff, they're my age. Some are older. Some are only a little bit younger than me. It was our generation finding new ways to reach younger generations, to inspire them and still tell creepy ass stories like we grew up doing around campfires, but on the internet. And it started way before creepypasta. The No Sleep subreddit actually is used to be brilliant. It's still brilliant. I still enjoy it. I'm still a fan. I write stuff there occasionally. But when it started, it was everything you read here is real. There's a sidebar on the Reddit. Sidebar is still there. I hope they never take it down just for nostalgia. But if you leave a story and I read it, I got to pretend it's real. If I comment on your story, unless I want to be banned from the subreddit, I have to perpetuate your story. So if you tell me a ghost story and you don't know what to do and you just watch some people in your family die, I got to give you advice, man. I got to tell you to go get salt and put it around your house. I got to come up with some advice to give you to keep your story going. And you as the author have to reply to my comment. And again, tell me whether, hey, that totally worked, thank you. Or just find another way to keep that story alive and going. So it's like a choose your own adventure where everybody's in on it. And it's a living document. It's a living, real story that we are living. We're not just hearing about it or reading it. We're part of the story now. And that's what creepypasta is. That's what No Sleep is. There was a story well before that with geosites called Ted the Caver, about a guy that was really legit caving that turned into this giant. It's a movie. It's all kinds of stuff. It's been around forever. I would definitely check it out if you haven't. But it was our way of realizing that the spoken word and reading was dying. How many people do you know that will look in you in the face and say, oh, I'm not a reader?
Oh, dozens. All the time.
90% of all the people I know, even people in different horror industries, tell me, oh, you wrote a book? I can read it, but I'm not a reader. And immediately it's like a dagger in my heart. I've never heard, oh, I don't listen to music when I did music. I've never heard, oh, I don't watch movies when I did movies. Oh, I don't go to haunts as a haunter. Every industry I've ever been in except for writing is everybody loves it. But reading, they love the idea of it, but people won't sit down. They won't read a novel hardly anymore. Very few people. And that's not even a generational thing. There's people my age and older that were just never readers. I think it started around my age in the 80s or so. It just became a thing that wasn't as big as film. It wasn't as big as art or music.
Yeah, I think just other options had come into play, and they were, and there were other things that could get done faster, than reading, and they can, tell that, but also too, it weakens your own imagination, which is unfortunate, and I think that's probably part of the cultural decay that we have today is there's just everybody's just ripping off each other, it's not even, and there's a difference between homage and even satire versus just plain ripping somebody off.
Exactly.
It's a huge.
And it boils down to this attention span. So movies are great. We can do short films, man. We can do TV episodes. They're short. What are we going to do with a novel? Oh, short story collection. Nope, that's still a book that someone's got to pick up and read your collection of short stories. So we know a short story is going to hook you. You're going to have the time to read it, or you're going to listen to a YouTube narrator narrate it for you.
Exactly.
So how do we do that? No Sleep. Creepypasta. We bring you into the story. We make you feel like this is a real urban legend that could have happened. That your cousin's, uncle's, and nephew's sister, roommate, knows this guy that knew somebody that worked with somebody that had this happen to them. And literally, the tradition of urban legend is entirely what creepypasta is.
Exactly.
It's just on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting too, is because Zach and I were coming up, as younger teens when the analog and the digital were clashing. And, and that's why, movies like The Ring were so successful, is because it kind of was born out of this whole, creepypasta about it. There's a videotape. And also too, is there's there was a legend that's never been necessarily turned into a creepypasta, but It was about a local haunted, and it might have been in other places, but in Chicago, it was a creepypasta or an urban legend about a haunted house that's apparently so scary that they would give you your money back every level that you would go up.
It was called the Haunted Hospital.
Is that what it was?
Existed in Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, and Pennsylvania simultaneously.
Yep.
I actually know the entire history about that haunt, and I'm writing a novel about it right now.
No kidding. Okay, then we're gonna have to have you come back. Yeah, we're gonna have to have you come back and everything else when you actually do the or the novel's finished and we can actually talk.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be I'd say in about 2 years because it's an epistolary novel, so there's like 40 different main characters. It's wild, man. But I mean but that's a thing. No one's ever done a movie or a book, which is why I'm doing one about it finally. But I've been hearing about this since I was a kid in the 80s, and to this day I know so much about not just horror, but I'm an aficionado and historian about haunts as well. Mm-hmm. And I get people every year, hey man, I heard about this thing called the Haunted Hospital. Do you know about it? I laugh. Which story do you want to hear, man? Which version of this story of what this place is did you hear? Because I know the actual real story versus the actual legit dozens. And the closest we've ever come to is Hell House. Have you ever seen the Hell House movies?
Yeah.
The ending where where people are dying inside, etc.
Yeah.
That is actually one of several of the more notable legends of what happened with Haunted Hospital, and it's where they took part of that from.
Okay, fair enough. They and I love those movies. I'm a big fan of those particular films. And then also too is and also too the ones that are actually true, like the floating extreme haunted house in Chicago that I grew up hearing about. The the one that's in a secret place every night. I heard about that in high school.
There's a couple of those out there, yeah.
Yeah.
You got, of course, McKamey Manor, which is new places.
Well, yeah. Everyone knows that crazy son of a bitch.
I think if people knew the actual real story behind that, because I've talked to him numerous times.
Oh yeah, no, I've watched it.
Surprises a lot of people. I think a lot of people think it's torture porn, dungeon porn. I've heard these things. I've heard that they just do that because they're a terrible human being. Do you know almost no one that actually shows up actually goes in?
Oh, I believe that.
They just taught people how to do it. Not because he doesn't want to give the money. He only charges you a bag of dog food.
Yep.
And he runs the dog care. That's it.
Yep, it's for a local charity.
Just wanted to figure out how to raise as much food for a charity as he possibly could by doing something insane. Yes, there have been some accidents that are documented that are real. There has definitely been legal trouble. The whole concept is madness. It's total batshit crazy. But man, the amount of shit that man has raised for people. And again, you got to be kind of messed up to come up with something like this. I mean, not gonna lie, he's a little off. But at the same time, almost no one has actually been to the place. It's like Woodstock, man. If you were alive back then, suddenly everybody was at Woodstock. We all know how many people were actually probably there. I mean, hell, every moment's got something. Every generation has got something where everybody went to this thing when maybe a millionth of the people that claim it actually did. You get a lot of conjecture and bullshit, but yeah, at its core, it's nuts. It's just nuts.
Oh yeah, the whole thing is nuts, and I did know about the charity. I know that he's raised a lot of money for a lot of the dog farms. I know what he does for a living during the regular day. He's a wedding singer. I think the part that is just I don't know if I necessarily dislike, but of how much that he as a person is very weak when it comes to hauntings and other scary things. Like I don't know how I don't know why that bothers me. But it bothers me. Like, I think maybe it's because I grew up with that like, if anything's hypocritical, I dislike it. Maybe that's a thing from my childhood that I have a thing about.
It feels disingenuous, and we don't necessarily like things that feel disingenuous to us when we're passionate about that subject. It's hard to see. I think that might be.
Yeah, and I think that's like maybe somewhere that I think that's definitely something because I've become I have a very, very special place in my heart for and it's been good and bad for years for HHN for Halloween Horror Nights. It's something I did with my cousin who lives in Florida, and we did it. We just talked about doing it just after my grandfather died, and it was something that we became passionate about. We've been doing it on and off since 2009, and I fell in love with other haunts and everything else. So it's one of those things that I have my sets of opinions about, and I do feel passionately about. Certainly not as passionately as you. I mean, you are the Renaissance man of all this stuff, but it is something that I do feel passionate about, and I think that maybe when. And also too, I grew up in a house, man. If you can't hang with the big dog, stay on the porch, or if you can't dish it out, don't take it, So
I want to tell you something that I'm not sure if anyone's ever told you before.
Fair enough.
It does not matter how many years I have been doing anything. You give yourself permission to be just as passionate as I am about anything every second of the day, man. I don't care if you've been doing it for a second or a million years. The passion is the passion, and it's for everybody at that equal. If we're not crazy about it, who's going to be, man?
Exactly. No one else.
Get that torch together.
Yeah, exactly. No one else is going to give a shit about it. That's the part of the passion that Zach and I share for filmmaking and for films in general. Trust me. And there's plenty of arguments that we've gotten in over different types of films and different things. But and I think that's why I love the community so much, is that because they're so passionate and because they're so loving about this genre of film that's brought all these people together. And it's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing.
And you got to disagree, man, because there's nothing worse in film than a group of yes men. Nothing good ever gets made when you got people that agree on everything. Yeah. That's not fun. It's boring, and you're going to make a shit project.
Yeah,
if you get $1 million, you're going to make a shit project.
Yeah, exactly. You mean A24 fans? I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Zach reining in.
I've said my piece.
Zach does not like A24 at all.
Fucking hate it.
Especially the horror division of it. I have like maybe 2 or 3 of their films, none of them horror.
Honestly, I'm in a weird place with that because, one, it seems like a weird setup to me. It seems like a money machine in a lot of ways to me, and maybe, again, a little disingenuous. But you know what it is doing? Horror. Even if it's disingenuous, even if it's maybe not what we want to see, the people that are most interested, that's going to start somebody's love of horror, man. Even if we don't like that project, someone out there it's going to be that thing for them. Somebody argued with me that Plan B from Outer Space was the best movie they'd ever seen. And it shocked me. And I was like, why? And they said, because something very special in my life happened that day. That was the day that my daughter was born. Oh. We went and saw it in the theater, and then not long after. And that movie, as bad as it was, gave me the most wonderful memories. And my memory of that movie is what cemented my love of film, as weird as it sounded. But it was a moment with a shitty movie that changed someone's life because of, the other things that happened that day. But they attributed not to the fact that their daughter was born, but they attributed it to Plan B.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, and what was this?
I think we just got to suck it up and understand that stupid things like that are going to exist.
Yeah. Yeah,
you're not wrong.
And we're allowed to be vocal about it. We're allowed to be vocal and not happy about it, though. We're totally allowed.
Yeah.
I preach that shit from the heavens. Trust me.
He does. And also too. No, yeah, and then also too is who was great movie by Tim Burton. Who was the director of that movie? Planet 9. It was
Edward.
And
Edward, yeah.
Take a look at that guy. They insanely passionate. They loved it. Loved what he did. They loved what he did. So you can't discount the passion behind it.
And then Bela Lugosi was also in that movie. People always forget.
Yeah,
and that was the last thing he ever did.
It was. I know he was.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, it was not. He was not in good health at that point. But you know what though? It's and also too is I bring this up as an example, like Batman and Robin. Terrible movie. It has brought me so much fucking joy in my life. The
holy rusted metal Batman.
Yeah, and also too is I remember one of my dearest friends, who's actually my roommate now, standing up at my wedding. We went to Vegas for the first time, and we went to an ice bar, and we cracked Mr. Freeze puns the entire time. They literally walked up to the bar, and he's like, "Cool party," and he's like, "Mark, let's get the dinosaurs." And I'm like, "The Ice Age, y'all." Can you be cold, Batman? Like it's fucking great. Like one of my old friends who was a recovering He was a drinker, and he eventually stopped, and everything else. But we were playing the drinking game for Batman. He didn't make it through the whole movie. He had to leave 20 minutes before. Then he's like, "Fuck, I can't do it no more." Every time he saw a grappling hook, Every time Mr. Freeze made a pun, every time Bane stated the obvious, every time Poison Ivy said a sexual innuendo, every time you saw bat genitalia, and then you had to chug a drink when you saw the bat card and when you saw Coolio. And that was the game. And we were not in good shape by the end of it.
Here's a super weird analogy for you. So you're into films, you're a cinephile. You really enjoy pretty much everything. How do you feel about Scorsese?
I love Scorsese. I love everything that he's done, but I for the most part, I would say about 80% of what he's done, I love.
Is it fair to say that you enjoy superhero films at all?
I do enjoy superhero films.
Scorsese feels exactly about them as you feel about A24. I mean, literally almost exactly. Yep. But think about that for a moment, like how fucking crazy that is. Like for him, that's the passionless.
Yeah.
And I love Marvel. I'm not a big DC fan, with the exception of Batman and Swamp Thing. Love Batman and Swamp Thing and any of the Dark Justice League stuff. Love it all. I just absolutely do not like Superman in any way, and that's their flagship boy. So I steer clear a lot from DC stuff. But Marvel, Image, all over that stuff. I love it, and I love Scorsese, and I don't know what he's got to bitch about. So to me, I don't think it's an analogy, because I just think this passion for A24 it's different.
Yeah.
But literally, it was a couple weeks ago where I sat down and stopped and thought about it, because I was literally having this conversation with some friends of mine over at PBDC, and we kind of got led into that same thing. Like, holy shit, it is the same.
That's awesome. I wanted to make sure too that I hit this, because you are the Renaissance man, and I want to take some time to talk about two different things, talk about podcasting and talk more about Haunt, because you kind of brought it up very interesting about like the Haunt. But before I get to those two topics, I have one question for you before we leave creepypasta. There's been a phenomenon in the last 5 years with Mr. Nightmare and with all these other things, and also too is you've watched a lot of our stuff, and we have a narrative show called Living Nightmares, which is based on real life stories that have happened, and we put them to film. The idea was that Mr. Nightmare does the audio version. We're going to take and do the film version, and we did 4 episodes. And we've had some pretty good success with that. And it's just funny that in a era of very super lack of attention span, TikTok, all these different things, I wonder, to you, a person who writes creepypastas and who was involved in it, I really want to talk about this. What do you think that this explosion that has happened? Like, Mr. Nightmare came out 5 years ago, and he's just, I watched his numbers grow up the quicker than any other YouTube person. I was with him towards the beginning. So I watched him go up from like 100,000 subscribers to 5 million, where he's at right now, so fast. And all these other people too, Mr. Creeps, all the other ones that are a little bit more longer. There's a great Australian guy who does really long ones, but there's just something so fascinating with it. And I imagine it ran in tandem with true crime, which my fiance is obsessed with, to the point where
it all falls under the speculative fiction genre. All of it, true crime, sci-fi, horror, a lot of those things, they work kind of together in interesting ways.
Interesting. Okay, so and I guess that people like this idea the same way that they would like roller coasters. Is this like, oh, this happened, And I get to that. There's also creepypastas that's clearly fictional, but it's very enthralling. It's enthralling. But as I look at these numbers, it really is the ones that are supposedly based on true stories that just really stick the landing with audience numbers, and it's just so fascinating to me how. It's these true stories, and most of them are relatively similar. It's a creepy guy, and it's a creepy guy interaction, and at the end of it, they survive because somebody had to come and tell the story. That's the formula, and it does go down to a formula the same as horror does. But it's so fascinating to watch this explosion happen. And why do you think specifically in the last 5 years from a timeline perspective? I know it's been going on forever, as you said, back to the No Sleep Reddit and to the early days. But for whatever reason, in the last 5 years, it's become so 5-6 years, so insanely popular. And I'm curious about what your perspective is and why this time period rather than any other time period.
A couple of things, really. All the people you mentioned would not exist if it weren't for actually David Cummings and the No Sleep podcast, which started as kind of a combination of the No Sleep subreddit, although they were technically unrelated because they just only used No Sleep authors in the beginning. they became so wildly popular that the first couple seasons were released for free. And then by season 3, David was able to start making money. Now they've got an expensive cast. A lot of them are in Canada. There's other countries. There's some here in America. They go on tour every year, multiple tours, like all over the country, COVID notwithstanding. And they were the ones that made this wildly popular. Chilling Tales from Dark Knight's Network made this popular. And then all the people you're mentioning saw where it was going, like very intelligent people with a passion, and picked it up and said, how can I spend it for me? How can I spend this doing this thing that I clearly love in a way that's not taking away from what they're doing, but I'm adding to it? And it's invention. That is what it is. You mentioned how you like, capitalism earlier. This is a version of capitalism, man.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's the kind that's born of, I am so utterly impressed at what this person did. How can I not only do this, but do it for a living so it's the only thing I'll ever have to do again?
Yeah.
And as we got, time started getting a little crazier, then honestly, COVID. The biggest boom was the fall before COVID was officially announced.
Mm-hmm.
People were getting sick all the time. They were home for like a week off work. No one knew what the hell was going on back then. But around that fall, man, was when really things started amping up. Like they were already going that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But 2019 was that year where everything was finally, the most important things were out there. Slender Man was driving still everything. Was still, for years then you had Marble Hornets, Everyman Hybrid, like all these shows that were specifically Slender Man based that were, videos, I guess like web series is, I guess, technically what they were. You had all these going on, and they were starting to die off a little bit, but the audio was getting bigger. And then you had more people start to pick up the video side of things. The video side died. COVID killed video. No one was filming. So the audio had to get more creative. It had to get bigger. More people needed to do it. I still, even just today, I got a message on Reddit from someone wanting one of my older stories because they decided they're starting a podcast. Just up and decided they wanted to do it. So, I'm getting contacted for a story I wrote like 7 or 8 years ago. And it's like, and as soon as that started happening in 2019, I started writing a lot faster because of all the requests, because people were just going on Reddit and going, this, please, I need this, I want that. And then Channel Zero happened on the Sci-Fi Channel. Every season of Channel Zero is based on a no-sleep story or a creepypasta. You've got Legend of Hill House. One of the writers comes from No Sleep. That's how he got. It's part of why he got his job. He also does stuff with, Don Mancini for the Chucky TV show now.
Okay.
So and now we're optioning everything. There are so many movies being optioned right now with writers from No Sleep and TV shows right now. So during COVID, all these people started getting optioned because they couldn't film. They had to figure out what they were going to come out with, and this was the trend. And word of all these options started flooding the market, and No Sleep and creepypasta. So even more narrators were picking these up because they were hearing, oh, this story was about to be optioned. I better get permission before anyone charges me any money and get out there. So when this episode comes out, that movie will come out later. It'll get me noticed. It'll jumpstart my channel. Or if they were already popular, it was just a smart business move. It was a smart business move at the end of the day.
No.
And that just fed everything. So is that need to seek out horror in new ways, that need for capitalism to inspire passion, and a pandemic that just created over time a perfect storm that honestly did the best thing for writers that I've ever seen. I'm gonna be honest, in the horror of in the industry of writing, specifically in terms of horror, this is the biggest boom we've had probably since about the 40s or the 50s.
Wow.
Just 100%. It's just the truth. Because when Poe was doing his thing, he was not popular, man. When Lovecraft was initially doing these things, some people liked him, but it wasn't all that. And hell, even about half a creepypasta and No Sleep, Cthulhu Mythos, if you really look at what they are, and really read the subtext between the lines, it's a lot of that. So, and it's widely popular because Five Nights at Freddy's.
That's true
That was
too.
literally based on urban legends from Showbiz Pizza Palace, which of course then became Chuck E. Cheese.
Yep.
Well, you should know. I mean, it started in Chicago anyway.
Yep. I did know that. So no, I love that. I think that's crazy. And I mean, and I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons why we, went to did our show. Excuse me.
I'm coughing like I'm just getting over like a really bad illness too. I'm trying to like lean to the side and cough, but oh my god, it's hard.
But anyways, so I mean that's the reason why we did the Living Nightmares episode, because we always knew that there's gonna be a wealth of material there. I wish it was more successful so we can keep going, because those fuckers are expensive.
No, the problem we couldn't keep going is because we couldn't afford to keep going. That was the problem.
Yeah, they're very expensive productions, but and then we were self financing, but I mean. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, they're great stories. I love them. I'll pop them back in and watch them, because
I've been actually wanting to do what you guys are doing as far as working with some of the others. I know quite a few of them to do some of the bigger ones. I own a film company too. Just again with COVID, I've been kind of not really doing much of anything.
Sure.
It's tough to get people to want to. Hey, I need to set like 20 people. Oh, that's too many people. A lot of people are still even now concerned about that. And it's interesting. I once did an entire feature-length movie for $120. We found everything we needed, literally, just asking businesses if they were throwing certain objects away. We made a list of every single item we needed. We talked to people that were passionate about it with an agreement. Here's our contract. If this goes somewhere and makes beyond the amount of money that we all collectively pull out of our pockets to have fun making this thing, this is how we divide it all.
Sweet.
And that's what that's what we made that movie for. And ultimately, we ended up raising probably about $10,000 over the period of, we're talking like 7 or 8 years, but almost all that's gone to charity, because we decided half of anything beyond our threshold went to the American Cancer Society. So
very nice. I love that. That's absolutely fantastic.
Like 3/4 of it all went to that. But
that's fantastic. I love that. And we had our own set of difficulties, but I think
there's a lot out there, man.
Yeah.
And also the actors you get. I mean, oh my god, as an actor myself and someone who also writes for and directs actors, fucking crazy.
I'm an actor too, so actors I know. Oh, we're all fucking nuts.
Actors are tough, man.
Yeah, we're fucking nuts. I've been very so Zach. I actually met Zach 8-9 years ago auditioning for his senior project. So and I've acted for him as a director twice or 3 times. It's been an amazing experience. But he's a fucking lightning rod for good casting. He hasn't experienced the shit show that you and I have seen in other circumstances. He's always had incredible luck on his
always do in-person auditions, and if you don't know how to read people, have somebody who does.
Exactly.
That is one of my key, ups. I read people in the room. I read how they act, like their body language, how they present themselves. All that stuff matters when I'm casting, because I do not have the time or patience to deal with people who, 1, do not give a shit about the role they are applying for, 2, have, I don't know, issues or whatever that they're going to bring to set.
Read for the part.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like I take a lot of things into consideration, and yeah, I have not been wrong since, and I am very happy and proud of that fact.
Yeah, and also too, he knows.
I took over and started my own company. Same situation. I would add one rule to that: do nothing with anyone unless they sign a contract. I cannot tell you how many projects of other people's that I've been a part of that it was a handshake deal with someone who walked off set that was the main character, and it then took another year or 2 to make because of all. Between some went straight to litigation. Some of it was, well, we're just going to dump everything. They didn't refilm everything, which made other people quit. So more had to be refilmed. The first movie I did took 6 years. I was not making it. I was acting in it. It took 6 years to finish.
Jesus
it's on Tubi now.
Christ.
You probably don't want to watch it. It's hilarious. It's comedy horror, but it's also pretty bad. I learned everything not to do in that 6 years.
Yeah, and that working on senior films when I was in college, that's exactly what I did. I was on, I want to say, at least 6 or so senior films before I decided, all right, I'm ready to make mine. Because there was a lot of stuff that didn't click for me as a filmmaker. So I was just like, all right, I was finally invited onto one. I'm going to take advantage of this, learn everything I can so I know what not to do.
Yeah.
Yep. And when you're doing horror, think about how much blood you need. Make 3 times that amount.
Well, you know what though? The good news is we already know that that's a formula that we already are very familiar with.
If you're using only one consistency, you're also doing it wrong. There's 7 major consistencies of blood that you've got to make and have on hand, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I know
Weird
that.
stuff. Weird stuff.
Yeah, the good news is we have we have an amazing effects guy that's our dear friend, and he kicks us. He's the monster penis guy. He's the guy who he's the guy who does all of our shit. So he's been great. And actually, it was never actors and crew for us. It was always third party vendors. That was always the problem. I had an issue with a cop car situation. It looks great. It's fantastic. But this guy put me into a level of frustration that I think, so Italians and Sicilians will understand this. There's understanding that there's a difference between business and business. And he wanted to see my business side. The amount of frustration. He's lucky he's not there, because I would have fucking killed him, and I would have put him in the back of his own police car and drove it into Lake Michigan. There's a great podcast where I go into a whole rant about it, but it taught a very important lesson: contracts. Write an agreement. It's really that simple. Write an agreement.
We've also heard that from several friends of ours. Contracts.
And also too,
I don't care if it's your mother.
Yeah.
Contract.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's not a personal thing. It should never be seen as a slight on anybody. It's just business, man.
It's very business, and it keeps everybody.
You're covered. We're all covered. Let's make this shit.
Exactly.
Yep. Agreed.
And then let's move on. Which is awesome. So the one thing too I didn't want to miss out is talking about podcasting and talking about haunts, because we've been trying to get haunt people on for a while, and it just scheduling.
I can give you hundreds if you want them, man.
We would love to talk about it, but I know too that is such an art form. I have one question, and it should devolve into something else. What is the most not misunderstood. That's what I was looking for. The most misunderstood thing about haunts and about haunt actors specifically. What is something that everyone either thinks is easy or they don't understand? What's something about the science of it and the craft of it that you hear all the time, or a little bit, that just really grinds your gears, as Family Guy likes to say? That you go, that's just fucking not true. And that drives me insane. Why do you think that? Why does the general public think that? I got a lot of opinions as regular actors, how they think that, they have opinions. But I'm curious about the haunt industry, haunt actors. What are some of these things that you've heard that you go, who the fuck tells you this shit?
Man, there are dozens of things that are all legit equally important. Number one, when a customer walks on and says, well, that wasn't scary. People need to understand that everyone has a different idea of what fear is, of what freaks you out. What a good haunt does is recognize when they're not capable of scaring you, but still goes out of their way to entertain you, to show you a good time. That is the number one thing. And I'm going to plug my haunt room up here for a second. Hell's Dungeon, Dayton, Ohio. We got a Valentine's Day thing coming up the Saturday right before Valentine's Day. We're doing a murder mystery party and a haunt. At our haunt, I took over as one of the acting management team this year. This is what we taught them all year, finally. This team taught them, if you cannot scare someone, here's the signs that you need to look for, that someone is not enjoying your space. This is what you do. We taught them improv, which is, as a haunter, if you cannot improv, I'm not going to say you won't make it in the industry, because there's plenty of people that can't, that, play victims really well, and they're great screamers, because it's cool to have a couple screamers, not too many, and not, it gets annoying.
Sure.
But it's cool to have some static characters, non-talking characters that can't do that so well. But it's the people that know how to read body language that will make the best hunters every time over everyone else, because they know how to adapt. And if our actors can't scare you, they will stop what they're doing. And mid-act, you'll see them just switch gears. But most of them do it now in such a natural way that if you're a hardcore hunter or hunter aficionado, you're gonna notice it, because a lot of them are so younger. A lot of these people are kids or adults, starting to get an awning. So you might see the gear switch if you know what to look for. If you don't, they're going to they're creepy, and then they just stop. And they'll say something. And here's one of my favorite things. It's a line that my character used that I also wrote for other people. Is has anyone ever told you look different when you're awake? And then you just walk away. I realized that I cannot scare you, but I'm going to leave you with that little nugget. And you're going to go, wait, what? And then I'm gone. I'm gone. I've disappeared into the fog around a corner through God knows how I've disappeared because you've got no idea because you were distracted. And I just need that one moment of distraction to be gone.
That's
But that
fantastic.
doesn't scare you, but God, you're going to think about that when you go home later. Even if you think about it, oh, that was hilarious. It's an earworm. You're thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, we were not going to scare all of you. We may never scare you at any haunt you go through, but a good haunt will entertain you. They will recognize that. And that's my biggest thing that pisses me off is, oh, you're not scary.
But
you're talking about me.
Yeah. I've actually that's actually happened to me at a haunt where like literally a creepy clown walked up in a very like high pitched voice and she's like, it's like, I like those new drapes that you put in, and then walked away. And I'm like, you know, or the ones that hit on you but then also say something creepy. I think those are fucking funny. They work.
He had to drag me away from a bunch of haunted nurses because I wanted to stay with them.
Yeah.
It was just silent home nurses. I'm there for life. I'm just gonna stay.
I'm there. They're like, you know, I was like a little parent and like a little kid at like a theme park. I'm like, all right, Zach, time to go home. He's like, no, I want to stay with the sexy nurses.
For actors, there's a lot of basic shit, man. This is actually, I've been putting together an actual class with handouts, which isn't really something that's done in the haunt industry. I mean, listen, if it's not done in Ohio, it's not done elsewhere. Ohio is the leader in the haunt industry. It always has been. It will always be. If you were to take the number of actual haunts in Ohio, not that stupid list you see going around where it shows how Ohio has like 100 and some odd haunts and everybody else has got like 12 or whatever. That is not even close to the real number of haunts here. That is actually outdated by 117 of just the business license haunts. You will not go to a town, I don't care how small it is in Ohio, without seeing a couple on someone's property. Not even just home haunts, but actual full like haunted hay rides in someone's farm that's not even advertised. You just saw a sign because you stopped out the highway to the gas station, like, oh, there's haunted house, let's go see that. So there are hundreds here. We drive everything. What people do in other states, it's probably because they've been here. They've seen how we run things. Because Ohio runs a lot of things. It's really hard to explain unless you've been to, unless you come to Ohio and see the haunts here. We just have a different everything. The intensity is different. The effects are different. And yeah, a lot of the most top rated haunts aren't necessarily in Ohio, but a lot of those same people that rate the top haunts haven't even been to Ohio haunts. They've only been to the other ones in their areas. And those are the ones that play. And there's a lot of debate about that actually in the whole review world. I love me some reviewers, dude. I love reviewers. Most of them are amazing people, but there's some short-sightedness sometimes if you've not been out here. But no open-ended questions is a big part of what I teach them. Don't say, do you want to play a game or do you want to play with me? You know why? Because some asshole or drunk or smart ass is going to stay in that room when the whole rest of this group leaves and say, okay, what do you want to play? And now your exit is cut off. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. I have seen people get punched. And in my time, I have been stabbed. I've got trampled by a horse in an accident once at a haunt. I've seen some of the worst shit happen to people at haunts because of either bad decisions, drunks, drugs were involved, or just weird confluence of events. Don't think it's not a dangerous scenario. No. Now, where I work now, these last 4 years or 3 years, sorry, almost 4. We've had great security teams that are there immediately. We have not had any major catastrophe. A couple punches thrown. If you're a hunter, you're going to get punched in the face at least once in your life. I'm going to say a dozen times if you at least do a couple of years. Reaction. It's just. And we're right next to the biggest Air Force base, right Pat Air Force Base. We're like less than a mile from the Wright Pat Air Force Base Museum. So we've got a lot of military people. PTSD is really prevalent in our area. They're gonna swing. That doesn't mean they're bad people and you rush them out. You look at it. Did you startle them so bad that they reacted? And then did they apologize? If they stopped and checked on you as an actor and they apologized, dude, it's an accident.
Yeah. And
people don't realize that we do put our lives on the line in odd situations. There's been mass shootings at haunts. I mean, all kinds of bad things have happened. During the clown takeover, there were some people that actually got hurt very badly because people were showing up dressed as clowns at their haunt. And they couldn't differentiate between some of the actors and the people, and guns were fired.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
It's a dangerous job. It's like working security at a nightclub. I'm dead serious. There's going to be sober people. There's going to be drunks. There's going to be nice drunks. There's going to be angry drunks. There's going to be people on heroin in your bathroom. There's just weird stuff is going to happen, and you will not have explanations. You just got to roll with it and hope to God that everything goes well. But then you got to understand that what a haunt is a weird combination of storytelling, live theater, and film. Here's why. Number one, when you walk through a haunt, that's planned. We know exactly what your perspective is going to be.
Sure. Now,
you can think that you're the kind of person like I am, like I say I am, but can't possibly be. You think that, oh, I'm looking at every detail. I'm going slow. You might be noticing more details than a lot of customers. But every detail you're catching is really we hoped that you would see it, because we know that you're walking in from stage left, because that's what that is when you're walking in that room going down the stage, right? We know your course. We know what you're going to film. The camera shows you what it wants you to see. Everything is lit in a specific way at specific angles, because that's what you need to see. It's like theater, because there's improv involved. If someone makes a mistake, what do? You don't freeze.
Just go
you
with
say
it.
yes and. It's yes and your scene partner picks you up, or the person in the scene next to you notices and helps you. Whatever, it never stops. You cannot remove the suspension of disbelief, or none of this is going to work. And it's storytelling, because in the scene, in your acting, in your costume, the music and sound effects that are in your room all together create the narrative. They create that live storytelling moment way more than theater does, but in a different way than film. So you've got all three of these things coming together, but in a situation where people will walk through drunk or on drugs or angry or just scared and react strangely. So it's full contact.
Yep.
Even if you're not an extreme haunt, and we're not an extreme haunt, we will not touch you. Most haunts will not touch you. We're still going in there knowing that we're probably going to get hit tonight. It's going to happen. You psych yourself up, so when it doesn't happen, you're like, hey, I got lucky this time.
Oh yeah. And I remember hearing stories from my family from the 70s and the 80s, and back in the day when it was a fucking, like, there was some shit. Like my Aunt Cindy getting kidnapped by a bunch of witches, and they literally locked her in some.
They just grabbed you and run into the woods.
Yeah. Locked her in some room.
Getting into it. Yeah, we were allowed to do stuff like that to a degree.
Oh yeah.
And there's still haunts now that, as long as you bill it that way, totally allowed to do it. You just have to bill it that way. There's a touch pass involved, like a red bracelet or something like that they'll know that they can grab you and do things to you, cover you in blood, whatever. I've been buried alive before.
So what's something else too that people are misinterpreting about?
Actually, do you mind if I ask a question about haunts?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, anything you want, man.
So one thing I've always wanted to know, because I always feel bad for doing this, when I'm walking through, I'm either laughing or I have a big smile on my face, like it's like it's because I'm like because I'm enjoying myself, like, because I just started doing haunt, because I never did haunts just because I never had people to go with or whatnot, but we started doing them back in like 2018, and we went to Hell's Gate and
that's a good one.
Statesville. Yeah, loved them. I had the biggest smile. That was the place with the nurses. I'm having such a good, and I walk out of there, I think like, they probably hated me because I'm just with this big fucking smile. I'm like, but I loved it.
What they did do is they remembered you. I guarantee they spoke about you at the end of the night, because here comes this guy. And the thing is, we have tough nights, man. Some nights we have people where we see 50 people and 4 hours. We're standing there with our thumbs up our asses, bored as shit, talking to people in the rooms near ours. And as a man, I am the only manager that works full time in the haunt. I'm doing nothing manager except the scenes I'm with. I'm in there the whole night with all the rest of the actors. And that's not because they won't, because the other managers, they'll jump in there anytime. And if we're too busy, anytime. It's just being a hunter is first in the acting side of it is, for me, is first before management. And it helps to have someone that's always also to see the other side of things. That's like my specialty. But we get bored. We get pissed. We have customers that come through and swing. We're angry. So when we see people like you, that is clearly, you're not making fun of us. You are enjoying yourself. And there's a difference. Yeah. There's like, oh yeah, that's fucking stupid. And oh my God, dude, did you see that? And just, there's a big difference, man. And we're trained to look at details, because we've got to look at your body language. We've got to read those things to entertain you. We love that. And my character right now is an asshole. He's an irredeemable asshole named JB Rotten. He runs the freak show. He's half carnival barker, half actual medical freak himself that he uses to make money and rob people. I heckle people. I will make fun of you based on what you wear. if you say or do something that I think my character thinks is stupid in his presence, he will stop your group and let you know that you're a complete fucking moron. But when I see people like you, I do it more and I dial it up. But what you will also see on my face is a grin that matches yours the whole time I'm doing it, because we've connected. I get it. You're enjoying it. Now you get to see me enjoy it, because I want you to see how much it means, that it means the same to us as it does to you. So no, we love that, man. Do that more. Encourage other people to do that, please.
No, because I love taking my time watching the scenery, enjoying the actors, especially when one thing I love are interactive and creative haunts. Like, all right, you got to get on your knees, go through this dark tunnel, or they do this thing with like the lasers and there's like a layer of fog underneath and you got to traverse through that, or you go through these walls or the spinning. I love all that shit. The more interactive, the bigger the fucking smile on my face will be. We were at Halloween Horror Nights this year and they had this like simulated raining thing. We were going through this like this Lovecraftian spirited dock thing. You could smell the ocean. You walk in and I'm like, holy shit, this got cold.
It got cold in here.
They had like sirens. There were dead boats. They had like these dudes in those old diving suits. The only thing I thought that was weird about them were their faces were like, it was like pretty colors and stuff. I'm like, that was a little weird. But overall, fucking loved
they were
it.
Fish scales. They're supposed to be fish scales.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more
big
sense.
ones from the mythos. Yeah,
it was like the fog and Stephen King, and I was like, BioShock's on its way, isn't it? It felt like that's the turn that it could take at any moment.
Dude, I would love to see a fucking BioShock theme haunted house, like, especially if you could somehow build it under the water. Oh, I would pay top fucking dollar to do an underwater haunted. Imagine they have to lather you up in scuba gear. Oh my god, that's the fucking dream right there.
Be still might beating fucking hard.
We do have to use not at our haunt, but a lot of haunts over here we use wetsuits sometimes. The longest haunt in the world is in Ohio. It's called the Lewisburg Haunted Caves. You are 100 feet underground. You're going through a cave system. I'm talking a couple hours. Okay, this is not a joke. I'm not over exaggerating. You can look it up yourself. It's in the record book. Still, no one's beat it. There are sections where you're walking over chasms. Now they seem a lot higher up than they actually are because it's designed to seem like it's a long way down into water, but really the waters are up underneath the bridge. They come up out of the water, reach, and they're allowed to touch you. They can't hurt you or grab you or like throw you, but they pop out of the water while I'm talking like a several 100-foot long bridge that's rickety and moves over water in a cave, and then touch your leg and right back down in the water. We have the USS Nightmare right on the edge of Ohio and Kentucky.
I've heard of that.
On a giant steamboat.
Yeah.
In the water.
I want to do this.
Isn't that one actually haunted?
Weird shit.
I want to do this.
There are rumors. I can't confirm it either way. I've only been there a couple times, but I don't know all the validity behind the rumors and what a lot of people have said about that boat. But I would believe it.
But that is the one that I'm thinking of that is haunted.
That's one of the big one is like the Queen Anne.
Thank you. Yes.
That's the big one that they do a haunt on sometimes, and that one I believe is actually the USS Nightmare. It's a much smaller decommissioned like steam vessel, but there's rumors about it as well.
Yeah, I have a special place in my heart for haunts that are haunted. This is something like it is a hat on a hat, but it's the best hat on a hat that you could possibly have.
People assume that the smartest thing to do is to build a haunt in a building or an area that is haunted. Terrible fucking idea.
Yes, very terrible idea.
I've worked at a couple. Like the one I work out now has a lot. There's a lot of things that you will just see and watch happen that's not connected to our airlines. There's no actor over there. It is not even something that moves, and you will just see it go. You will be the only one in the building, and you know this because you've got access to all the cameras with sound as you're walking around, because it's not necessarily in a bad area. It's just not an area you want to leave the doors open.
Fair enough.
And you'll be down there by yourself, looking at the camera, making sure your phone, all the camera feeds. You know you're alone, but you walk into a room and something goes around the corner. Your peripheral vision, you're like, oh, that's weird. So you start moving quicker, and every time you go quicker and hit the next room, peripheral vision, right around the next corner. Over and over and over. Weird stuff like that happens where I'm at. But I did work at a place that I partly owned this place a long time ago. It was in Cincinnati. It was called the Bordello of Blood, and it actually was in an old bordello that still had the working bar underneath it. And we had some pretty dangerous things happen there involving things that did not exist. One in which a woman was crying and screaming, and we thought it was a customer that had come in that no one caught, and we didn't even charge them. And 8 of us physically watched her stop and stare at us and run up to the next floor, which we couldn't use because it wasn't safe. And we ran up to it, because it was a safety problem. And she, normal clothes, it wasn't like 1800, it wasn't like Victorian clothing and all this weird shit. It was just a person. It looked like she had like a white hoodie on, like a dark, dirty white hoodie. That's what it looked like. And we ran up there and we see her, and she's moving like right into an area we know where the floor is unstable. So we're freaking out and moving forward. My buddy rushes out to like grab her, and we all watched her and just not be there. It was like almost vapor all of a sudden. And he went through the floor, caught himself where when we went down and looked up to see how we could help, his lower half was hanging out of the ceiling. He was only holding himself up from his upper body strength. That was it. And a lot of other weird and dangerous things happened like that the whole time. We ended up only staying open for a month. And I believe in all that stuff, but I've never been run out from it because I'm just too inquisitive, and I have to know things, and I have to experience things, even if it's bad for me. And but the people I worked with, people started quitting one after the other. The other one was like, dude, we can't. The insurance alone is through the roof right now with all the accidents that have happened. We've got to cut. So we actually lost quite a bit of money on that.
Wow,
quite a bit of money on that building.
Holy
so it can be very dangerous to have a haunt in a haunted location. It's great for your customers. It's great for your notoriety, but pay attention to the history of your location. Make sure it's not a haunt that's going to get people killed.
Yes, no shit. Well, I mean, I learned that from Hell House LLC. I learned enough of my lesson and everything else. So, fucking love that. And don't get me wrong, I would love to have you back on with some other haunt actors and everything else at another podcast to talk all about that. But I didn't want to miss.
Oh man, the network that I work for, PPDC, Psycho Bunny Death Call. One of our hosts and one of the owners, Akaha. Her entire show is Aka's Chit Chat is primarily just haunt actors. Actually, that's how I joined the network. Was she did one episode with me, loved me so much they just hired me like permanently. So I do a lot with them now. But I mean, you name a state, hell, you name a country, and we can probably just send you a message and say, hey, how many people do you want? Where what different backgrounds do you want them from, and just give you a list.
That'd be fucking,
anytime, man.
Dude, that would be unbelievable. And I'm glad you made a really good transition there to talking about the podcasting and everything else. How did that start with you, and how did you start doing it? Obviously, it's probably not as much of a bad, and a hard transition going in from the creepypasta side and all that writing stuff, and then going into the written word, and then going into that. You also mentioned that you had some radio background as well. So I'm curious how that came into your existence, and then specifically talking about horror within that.
Here's the weird thing. You were talking about how you remembered when you were young, where digital and analog was going digital. Mm-hmm. I was in broadcasting school the year that they announced we are no longer using analog and we're going fully digital. So we have to retrain you on everything, but we're not going to charge you for all these extra classes.
Well, that was nice.
I cut some of the original promos for an old TV show called Kindred the Embraced. It was about Vampire the Masquerade, great little TV show for a while.
Sure.
And I was still on the old analog editing systems where you had to take your VHS tapes here and there and move a little cutting wheel. It was a nightmare to do, right? So we're going straight into digital for the video side, but everything in audio is still, dude, it's still carts, the equivalent to over large 8 tracks and reel to reels. We're just now starting to use computers for all this stuff, like for our broadcasting. It's like everything's being updated like digitally now. And it was a weird combination for me of growing up with audio dramas, like The Shadow, like a lot of great old school, terrifying tales. Because my mom loved them when she was a kid. And we had a radio station every Friday night that would play them back to back for like 5 or 6 hours every Friday. And that was a family thing that ended up again over time, just me and her doing together. And then like coast to coast with, Art Norrie, George Bell, George Norrie Arbell. Sorry, I just totally said that backwards. But so it started before then, but when I got into broadcasting, it was both radio and video. And then I started getting hired for radio stations. And I just realized that I mean, when I'm not sick, I obviously have a voice for radio. It was something that was supernatural to just talk and bullshit. And it was always talk show stuff, like some music, but talk show stuff. And then I quit. One day I ended up joining a band. I didn't do any sort of broadcasting or anything. I started doing horror films. I was doing wrestling professionally for a while. And then I got old. Seriously, I just started getting old, man. And I hit, I think I was 31 or 32, which when you've led the life I've lived, surprising I'm still alive. It's a big age to get to. And an old friend of mine popped up and said, "Hey, you're Kevin Smith." And I was like, well, yeah. He's like, "Do you like podcasts?" And I'm like, "What the fuck? What does that have to do? What?" And that's when and apparently he'd been doing podcasts for a couple of years. And I didn't know what a podcast was because I just didn't know. I didn't pay attention to the world. I have a bad habit of living in my own little world. And he's like, "Yeah, listen to this." And I listened to this podcast. And I was like, "Oh, dude, that's awesome. I should listen." He's like, "No, I'm asking you because of your background. I want to know if you want to do a podcast with me. We don't live in the same state. We haven't for years. We just roommates. We're best friends. This is how you and I can connect." He was in Tennessee at the time. I'm in Ohio. I was like, "Yeah, screw it. Let's try it." That became like a something that we did like once a month to every other week to every week to now suddenly we had people like Christopher Moore, Mark Dufault. We had special announcements from Anne Rice. I mean, just all kinds of people in the horror industry too. Tony Todd, the entire cast of Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Hellraiser, Nightbreed, like right place, right time. We'd go to conventions. "Hey, can you do me a favor? Can I get you on camera or your voice? Let's do it." And it just became this thing where we just kept doing it. And then suddenly we were a network. And then about a year before COVID, my partner had some issues and we kind of folded. And then I took a break, honestly, because we had been doing the show at that point in time about like 6 or 7 years solid.
Wow.
We were doing really well. We had switched platforms so many times, made my head spin. At that point in time, we had like 4 or 5 co-hosts, or some episodes were like sometimes 3, 4, 5 hours long because we didn't do it for money. We did it because, we were friends and we wanted to do it. And when we did make money, it was like, oh shit, we can buy a better computer. We can buy a better mic, we can buy all these things. And then now suddenly podcast pays for itself. All the video projects we're doing, like we did our own Slenderman series for a while, that paid for itself because of advertising from the podcasts. Everything just kind of, we didn't get rich, but everything paid for itself. And when he stopped, I lost my passion. And I kept trying. There's like a couple different times where I tried to get back into podcasting. Some of it was through, narration stories, like my own stories and other people's stories sometimes, or I'd be a guest on friends' podcasts, or like in this situation, I find some awesome people and get offered the opportunity to sit down and hang out. And then PPDC happened back in September. And that was the first time that I found like a group of people that I immediately was just like, this felt like a deal partner again. Maybe, I mean, better in some ways, in their own unique ways, different. And it just made me realize how passionate I'd always been about broadcasting also. And we do a lot of true crime, cults, serial killers, haunter interviews. Sometimes we play Cards Against Humanity and stream it, or just, act like terrible people for a little bit. We have edible shows, which you can imagine those are hilarious. But I've even done mystery science theater like type shows where we just, public commons, freak whatever licensed commons movies and just have fun. I think their passion just becomes, it goes back to storytelling and my grandma. Podcasting is just me sitting here telling you guys a story, man. Whether it's about what I've written, my favorite movie, everything we talk, creepypastas, it doesn't matter. I'm just sitting here talking with awesome people on a story, man. And my mantra in life is that I don't care how old I am. I don't care what is going on. I don't care if I am poor and penniless for the rest of my life. I want to make cool shit with cool people. And if I'm doing that, everything else is going to work out because that's my love language. That's my passion. That's my soul. If it's horror, great. If it's podcasting, it's great. If I'm slapping myself in the face at a comedy show and making 20 people laugh in a room, that's great. If only one person reads my next book or tunes into my next podcast, I made a new friend. I just met someone new. One person that I influenced. Just one. I'm good with that. And once you hit that, you realize that the pressure's gone, man. You're going to have monetary pressures with projects. That's not going to go away, man. Like, you're going to have stupid people do stupid shit that you can't make cool things with sometimes. But as long as you're still doing that and realizing that you're doing it for you and not for other people, that you're happy with it, fuck it. You're going to always be happy with what you're doing.
I love that. And actually, I can't say anything better than that. So we're going to go right to the question of the podcast, because if I'm going to end something on something, I think that it should end on this. And I'm a talker, man, but I know when to concede. Anyway,
I get paid to not shut up for a living. I'm sorry.
No, dude. Oh my god,
dude, this is fucking great.
Do you know how much easier it is to fucking have another podcaster on this and to have like a full-blown conversation, this is right next to the producer of one of our dear friends. He was who's a hip-hop artist, and he works at the Last Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon. It was one of that conversation and this conversation were the easiest conversations that we've had in a while. So no.
I'm sure you've had the people like that seem pumped up. You talk to them, they're like, "Oh, this is going to be awesome." And they get on the camera or the mic, and they're just like, "Hi, my name is," and they get quiet. And just and your message is like, "Dude, is everything cool? Like, do we need to cut? Take a break? Are you all right?"
It's like that joke in Family Guy. On the third day, Abraham said this and this and this, and then God said, "Could you please step closer to the microphone? I can't hear you." But no, anyway, so I end every podcast with a question of the podcast. It's a fun one that I just make up. I don't pre-plan those. But I think it's actually appropriate, and I might have asked it before, but I really want to hear it this time around. What is a type of haunt?
Hold on a minute. Hold on. Phrasing. You said I might have asked it before, but I really want to actually hear the answer this time around.
Yes.
And that really made me laugh because that is such a podcaster thing to say to a guest.
Absolutely. Just by any chance that you go back and look at the previous podcast and go, that wasn't an original question at all. How dare you recycle on my part?
Trust me, Mark. I know you've recycled comments or questions at least 2 or 3 times.
Oh, you have to.
Dude, if you write something that works, you put that in your back pocket because your next guest probably has not even heard of your show, let alone watched 5 seconds of it. They're not going to know the difference.
Correct.
Don't work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Exactly. So, because we're all massive fans of haunts, obviously what is a type of haunt that you've always thought of in your head or always wanted to see but have never seen before?
You asked that for the Lawn Podcast.
I did ask that for the Lawn Podcast, but we are also in the presence of a great haunt.
No, absolutely.
Hunter, so I want to deep dive into this. What's the type of haunt?
I'm going to blow your mind.
Oh, I can't wait.
I'm not pompous. I have no self-esteem, no ego. I've never had those things because I don't care to have those things. So part of the whole book I was telling you about, the Haunted Hospital book, it's exploring the past and the events that happened and the epistory, like hidden documents, emails, kind of thing. But the whole premise of it is that there's this guy that has these friends that get together and they take the whole concept of that original haunt and they turn it into something like huge. Like their company is known for these giant things. And so they redesigned the original Haunted Hospital using the same name for a pop-up weekend attraction to make all this money. Very similar to the team that did these things in the Hell House movies, because they were talking about the past project. It's very similar to a group of people like that. So I've been working on this concept for a haunt since I was 9 years old. My mother actually helped me design parts of the concept for this. So much like Haunted Hospital, if you get out in a certain amount of time, there's prizes. Now, the original actual story is that you got your refunded tickets to come back with a friend another night and a t-shirt that said, "I survived the Haunted Hospital." That's the actual original history for this, by the way. That's what you got out, and it was under 3 hours because they were allowed to lock you in closets and shit for as long as they wanted. Like weird shit. It was the 70s, man. So that's sort of the premise in this. They take it a step further. There's time trials where you can do challenges and very odd things. Think like Fear Factor and weird stuff like that. Like you eat some bugs or whatever, where you can shave time off and actually compete to survive during this time period of getting out there. So it's that sort of really time-hardened setup. There's like a buried alive challenge. There's all these little things you can do. But it starts with a show that tells you the narrative of what this haunt is. It seems to summon spirits from the other world that live on this property, and they give you candles and tell you these candles can't go out for the first full part of the haunt. If these candles go out, not only could something terrible happen to you, but you're going to lose time, and you're definitely not going to get out under 3 hours. There's this urgency, financial, whatever you want to call it. There's multiple different urgencies. And then you have plants where you see someone's candle go out and suddenly that person disappears.
Oh.
Because if you put plants and they really see like something just happened to someone, the intensity. But it starts as a haunted trail after that, or a haunted hayride. Goes right to a haunted hayride. Everybody's loaded up, right? Towards the end, oh man, the driver's acting really weird and erratic. It seems like the engine's misfiring. It just broke down, man. You saw all these scenes, all these crazy things were going on. No time trials yet, except for your candle, getting it to stay lit in a moving vehicle. But you get to where you're going. Smoke starts pouring out of the engine, fog machines, panels open up under your feet, and hands come out and grab you. You suddenly realize you're in a graveyard, and you're now being abandoned by the driver who's kicked you off because it's broken down, and then drives away and leaves you there. Then you play Ghost in the Graveyard if you're brave enough. You move on to the haunted trail. You notice that you're walking through all these dense woods, again, terrifying things, cryptid heavy, a lot of cryptid based, like creepypasta type stuff, like really just mind altering, more challenges, buried alive. And as you start to walk, you start realizing now you're going uphill. Eventually you see the farmhouse on top of the hill. Now it's a haunted house that you have to survive by starting at the top floor and working your way down to the basement and out. So it's this multiple attraction, all built into one, with time trials, with games. And not to mention before and after, you've got freak shows going on. You've got carnival games. You've got the oddies, freak show type stuff. I mean, you've got all these different things happening. Bands, all different genres that are all themed, food. So it's this giant circle of just parties and games and all these crazy things haunt with that giant haunt right in the center. And that is the haunt that I'm going to create one day, that I've been designing since I was 9, just for what I hoped would be the book I'm actually finally writing now. But it's a lot of interactivity, man.
That's fucking fantastic, man. Zach,
because you were mentioning that interactivity is what got you off on haunts, man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's what does it for me too.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
All the 100% of the time.
To add to that, like that's like yours is way more expansive than I. Like my 2 ideas for actually 3. A lot simpler, but just so you can quickly get through them or not. One was this is inspired by a Halloween Horror Nights thing. We went through the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one, and it was just like it felt okay. But what I thought would have made it cool was, all right, you hold off, you let the group go, you wait, and then out of nowhere, like the guy who's holding off just says, "Run." And then as you start running, Leatherface bursts through like the sliding door with the chainsaw and chases you through the house. That would have been sick. And you could do that with stuff like Jason. Or you can get a little bit more creative with like multiple Freddys and like some weird dream shit. And I would love to see something like that.
To our hunt. A lot of haunts over here do very similar things. There's one that actually used to do it with Leatherface for a while.
Dude, that's fucking sick.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man, it's brilliant though, because you don't expect it. You think you should expect it, but then you're like, oh no, it's the end, it's over, and then.
Yeah. One of the other ideas I had was maybe like something akin to like a survival room, like I go to the Doom experience, like fucking Slayer and shit like that. Like you're given like an airsoft gun or a paintball gun, and you have to go through this thing and you have to kill all the demons and shit like that. And if they like grab you or like capture you, it's game over. Like you have to get from one end of the base to the other end of the base. Something along the lines of that. It doesn't have to be Doom thing. I just imagine that because I fucking love Doom.
Yeah, Doom's
or we have 3 companies that do some similar. One with Billy Ball, one with laser tag, and one with paintball guns. It's more zombie themed traditionally.
Yeah.
But I've seen some demon ones and some like one year I saw a laser tag one that was American H. McGee's version of Alice in Wonderland, like the really dark, fucked up shit. But it was laser tag. It was blow your mind stuff, man. It's
that's so fucking sick because we don't have like the closest thing we have to something like that is the Monster Truck paintball experience, which is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But and the last idea I had, I want this idea to be put through it full. You have to do it in a forest or a jungle experience, and you have a group of 4. You're given like all sorts of military grade airsoft weapons, and a predator is hunting you. Some guy, whoever the biggest guy in your group, he gets the fucking chain gun. But there is a predator hunting you, and this actor has to be good. He has to be able to do the predator clicks. He has to be big, and he has to be stealthy too. Climb trees, parkour, all that shit. I don't know how you would pull that off, but I would kill to see or experience something along those lines, and my brother would too, because we are predator fanatics. It's like a religion to us.
Like about 12 or 13 years before its time, something very similar to a Dead by Daylight setup before.
Oh, nice.
I'm talking years, over a decade before the game even existed. Weird shit like that. But like that stuff that happens in Ohio like 10, 20 years ago, like no joke, that people, it was great and then it ran its course, but everywhere else has never seen it. And we're just like, oh, we should bring that back.
You should.
So you might inspire me or other people around here, because I've heard about some things like people talking about it like in nearby states here recently. There's a great review company called Scurry Face. A guy named Tyler, fantastic guy, has been running the thing for like 7 years. He was just talking to me the other day about wanting to do a Dead by Daylight experience out in Alabama, and I was like, dude, done it. Let's talk. When we did it, it was Silent Hill based, and you had to actually collect keys and shit. It was
perfect. You could do Silent Hill, Resident Evil. Like, there are so many video game theme-based ideas that you could do that would sell like hotcakes, because gamers love that shit. As a gamer myself, I'd see that and I'd go, yes. Like there was a Resident Evil haunted house for the Universal Halloween Horror Nights. Japan, specifically Japan. I wished it was in Florida, in America, but no, that was a Japan exclusive.
The only year I got to go, they had a Resident Evil one. It was the first year that they did the Walking Dead one. They also did Resident Evil.
Yep.
Video game or movie?
The video game.
Okay, thank God.
Like there was someone running up a wall, paused in place, and the whole room. You saw a block letters that said pause when you walked into the room, and everything was frozen. There was a liquor coming off the wall with his tongue just frozen in place. Like, it blew my mind, dude. Like, I got the shirt somewhere. If I can find it, I'll tell you what year it was. But
it was before my time. It was probably like 07, 08, 06, somewhere around there.
If this were Walking Dead, this would have had to have been around 2010 or 11.
I don't remember.
I think it was in my junior year of high school, so probably 11.
I don't think that I was there on that
season
year.
3. Season 3 was the big season.
Okay.
Right between season 3 and 4, Walking Dead is the year it came in.
Okay.
So
that's around 13 or so.
Yeah, and then I might have missed that year. Because I've been going a lot and everything, and I'd seen a bunch of crazy shit.
It was the only haunt that was not good there.
That sucks.
Brilliant. It was the year the Evil Dead remake came out. Well, it's not really a remake, as you know, but
13.
It was the year that. Because they actually had the blood rain and the pages from the book, and Cabin in the Woods was there.
Then I was there.
Hold on. Wait, they actually did the blood rain?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
also saw Maya cutting her. It wasn't Maya. It was her other friend cutting her leg off with the electric carving knife.
I missed all the good ones.
Yeah, I remember.
I missed all the good ones.
I'm having flashbacks about it now into this, because I remember the Cabin in the Woods one very clearly, and then also too is the Evil Dead, and then they also had American Werewolf in London that year as well, and it was
that might have been the best one,
and it was fucking fantastic. The Cabin in the Woods, that's my favorite horror movie. So I remember I ran through that, and I remember my cousin had not seen the movie yet, and we loved it. He had so many questions. It's like why were all those monsters over here? And
the way they did that with the effects too, and like the holograms and all that, like of walking down that corridor with the elevator doors, just
it was so cool. It was so. And actually, by the way, until I'm very like, I was very before the network. I was very on my toes, so it was very hard to get me. And I was also, I just am like, it just is what it is. I was always on my toes, and if you got me, that was impressive. Like, because I don't get got.
I shake hands. I stop and say, "You don't know how important this is, but you got me." And then when I leave, I find out the owner, and I tell them who it was and why it mattered.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I go tell everybody I know about it.
Because I very rarely get got, but that was also the one house that I let those feelings go. Like, I was like, I'm going through this because it's so important of a movie to me. I was like, I'm going through this like a regular person because I fucking love this. But I for my choice though, it's definitely there was an idea. It was more of an idea, and then I have a few themes that I wanted. I always wanted one that would separate groups. And say like 3 people have to go this way and 3 people have to go this way. Like, I would have loved to done that concept, but when it comes to like themes, it's definitely when we went to one of them, they had an elevator. And like a lot of theme parks do this, like where they'll have like an elevator shake or to simulate
elevator.
Yeah, they're transporting you to another place and everything else within them. Yep. I would love that concept to be used with, if we're gonna go to space, Alien or the Flood from Halo, that specific one.
I like to see an Alien Isolation, sort of like based one. That would be a really cool.
And then of course
that would be a dream.
That would be a fucking fantastic. And then of course the opposite, going to the ocean to go do BioShock. That game has a special place in my heart. The poster's right behind me. It's very, very huge, in my life. So I would love to see that. But when it comes to the whole thing, the whole concept, I thought about that years ago about separating groups and being like, all right, only 2 people can go this direction and 3 people can go that direction.
That's not a normal thing to not separate groups, right?
Yeah, but separate them during the actual during the actual normal thing. Really? Because I haven't seen that.
I'm going to say something very unpopular. Here's where Universal Horror Nights will always fail, and it will never get better. You go through them as a line.
Yeah, conga lines.
We've talked about
the
biggest complaint.
The only thing, period, that's good about that place is all the fucking work and the details and the environment.
Yes.
Now, nowhere in Ohio will you ever go through anything as a line. At best, you're talking maybe a group of 6 or 7, unless you fight with the owner. We've had people make us put their group of 10 forward. Fucking hate it. I don't like to have a group bigger than 5 or 6 come through my haunt. And if we feel like it for fun, when you get to my freak show, I'm gonna split you up. I'm gonna find a reason to keep half the group there and just to be dick and like, get out of here. You're my problem now. We do this. It's actually a super common thing. It's one of the things that honestly I think makes Ohio a lot different. Is most haunts you go to, you're already starting with a small group to make it personal. So you have these unique experiences. You're going to have assholes behind you that are drunk that might run and try and catch up with you. We train our actors to stop that. Most good haunts train the actors to stop the drunks from ruining the experience of the other people, from catching up with the people in front of you or falling back, going too slow. We have ways to, to kind of meter that. But I think the coolest thing that I've seen in recent year, someone made a choose your own adventure haunt where not only could you get separated from your group, you could walk out a different exit and have to wait 10, 20 minutes on them to even finish their experience.
I love that.
Me and my wife went there by ourselves, and we still, holding hands, they managed to separate us. And she's like me. She does not get scared. She loves horror, does not freak out about stuff, but will shake your hand and applaud you if you do a good job. We somehow got split up. And I walked out a completely different side of this haunt than she did.
That's
and
awesome.
There's a 5-minute difference. And we're like, it looks like a carnival ride. It looks like a bad fun house at a carnival ride because it's on the risers with the trailer thing. It doesn't even look like it could possibly be that big until you walk all the way around and realize there's 8 different exits. And we saw different things. Which leads me to one of the greatest creepypastas of all time, No End House. If you've not checked it out, do yourself a favor. It's about a haunt that you walk in room number 1, it looks like Kmart or Walmart leftover haunt shit just in a room. Like bats, rubber bats, stupid. But each room you go to gets more and more and more intense.
I have heard
now,
this.
They did a season of it for Channel Zero, but it's not nearly as good as the actual story. But in my opinion, it's probably one of the best creepypastas. But it's about a haunt, and it gets deeper to the point where you don't even know if you've actually left the haunt. You're at home, but you think you might not have ever left. Like it's so psychological. It's messed up. Like that kind of stuff is the stuff you can do in haunts, man. Like it just takes a little bit of ingenuity. You'd be surprised what we make and things that we pull off at ours. We're not a big haunt, man. We're still pretty small. We're underneath the strip mall, for fuck's sake. Like literally, we're under a strip mall. We're the whole basement. You have to actually walk downstairs to get into Hell's Dungeon. We are literally below ground. And what we've done with a small space, and we're still one of the biggest haunts in our area because we keep expanding and finding new hallways that we didn't realize were there, or just weird shit, just adding on and adding on and adding on. Even when we can't afford it, we're still adding on. I think maybe this year we'll have to switch to cardboard boxes or something. I don't know. But you can do so much with just a little bit of ingenuity and just a little bit of forethought. I can take a gallon of paint, a light, one single light fixture, and a fan, and do something with the room that you've never seen before that cost me maybe $20 because you know what? That was only for the paint. Everything else I found either discarded on Craigslist in the free section or whatever. I just came up with a creative way to use it. Our coolest props are run on air, and we use motors from a windshield wipers and turntables from old microwaves.
I love it.
The shit you can make out of that, dude, will blow your mind. It's just
fucking
it's crazy stuff.
I love it, man. So, all right, good sir. This is your opportunity. We're gonna wrap this sucker up. This is your opportunity to look directly into the camera and plug all your wonderful social medias where the good people can find you and all the amazing things that you're up to. And then I'll close it out with my stuff. Go ahead, sir.
All right, man. The number one place where you can find every single thing I do, no matter what medium it is raztslasher.com. That's got my writing on it. That's got all the links to all the podcasts that I appear on, every narration that's ever been done of my work, how I feel about literally everything in the world with my blog, and all the free short stories that I offer, along with all the purchase links to everything I do all the time because I've got nothing better to do with my life than make you buy my things. On top of that, the Psycho Bunny Death Cult Network, PBD CTV on YouTube. All my live shows go through YouTube with that group. And YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitch, Clapper, we go through everywhere, at least until Slasher actually gets on PC. And then, of course, we're going to be streaming on Slasher too, because you got to. And this year, I did something weird. There's a competition called the SAS, the Scare Actor Spectacular. It's worldwide, not even just US, it's worldwide. It's hosted by Scurry Face. I was accepted and entered as one of 115 contestants. It starts this coming Sunday. What's today? Saturday?
Yep.
Yeah, well, January 8th, but whenever this comes out, it started on January 8th, right? And it goes only until August.
Holy
so
shit.
As long as I stay in and I'm there, you can look for me on the SAS website, SAS or Scurry Face, SCURRYFACE.com. And or just check out Raz T Slasher again. I'll have links everywhere and Facebook. And you can vote for me. You'll see me do all kinds of hilarious stuff, weird stuff. We can team up. So Aka, that I love to death, also from the network, we're partnering up this year and doing it together. There's already a meme of us face swapped with Kid and Play to announce our entrance, which is absolutely just as terrible and hilarious as it sounds. It looks bad, but it's hilarious. So we'll be doing lots of funny stuff, some serious haunt stuff, but it's all about haunt love. There's no prize money. It's bragging rights and us getting to network with haunts all across the world and loving it. So that's the biggest thing I'm doing right now. And I think the last thing I really want to plug is a book that I just came out with. Started as a joke. I wrote a kid's book. It's called, oh my God, I hold on a minute, 1 second. I just remembered that I got a box of them right here behind me.
Ah, nice.
Show it off.
I just had to send a bunch of these out. And I don't write kids. This is not a normal thing. I write pretty serious horror novels, comedy, and a lot of shorts. And, film scripts and stuff.
Lincoln's Halloween Adventure.
That's awesome.
It is
so
actually
awesome.
The person that illustrated this book. I got to say, Stu Brown. His wife is one of the people that collects all those stories for Chilling Tales from Dark Nights. Ooh. So she is not only a writer who's also known in the No Sleep and creepypasta universe, but she collects stories to pay people like me to bring their stories to life on their network. Well, her husband, Stu, also does a lot of art for all the horror stuff. And he agreed, because they've got 3 kids, to do this project with me, because it was also something he'd also always wanted to do. But, when in horror do you ever just to stop and go, hey, you know what? I'm going to write a kid's book, a kid's picture book. I mean, it's a picture book. It's like ages 4 to 7, dude.
That's so fucking awesome.
My publishing company, Faycore Publishing, she's like, you know what? If anyone can pull this off, dude, it's you. And the book is literally about a kid named Chase, well, Lincoln in the book, that I work with at the Haunt, whose mother is one of the acting managers with me, who's terrified of everything. This kid loves Halloween. He loves spooky stuff. But if he's in the dark for a second, he melts. Like, he just can't do it. It's named Lincoln because my first great niece or nephew, Lincoln, was born the day I wrote the first sentence of this book, and it's specifically for him to grow up with having. It's going to be a whole series now.
Nice.
But it was just this love of community, the haunt community, and my family, that I wrote a story about this little boy named Lincoln that's scared, but realizes he needs to rely on his family to find courage and to not be afraid to meet new friends. So he befriends the 2 monsters under his bed, the snake in the basement, and the ghost in the attic, who turns out that they were just as afraid of him as he was of them. And together, they decorate the house for Halloween. That's the whole story.
That's amazing. It's
a beautiful book.
It's a fun thing, man. Yeah. And next year it's going to be Lincoln and his friends meet Krampus. So that's going to be another fun one.
Ooh. Dude, thank you so much, man. Dude, it was an absolute pleasure having you on.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure having you on.
This was the longest podcast we've
had
been able to do. I want to point that out because No. Because it's like this guy would schedule podcasts back to back to back. So I'd be like, Mark, we have a podcast in 10 seconds. Just
We'll message him. We'll tell him we're like
So it's been nice to let it run for once.
Exactly. So it was an absolute pleasure. I'm going to close this out. You, sir, are welcome back anytime. And we'd love to be on anything that you have as well. We'd love
definitely
come and
I'm
hang
all about
out.
the cross promotion, man. I'm already going to be talking to everybody at PBD. So like, we got to get these people over here. I love you guys, seriously.
Dude, it was an absolute pleasure. And dude, we got some things to talk about when we get off this podcast.
Definitely,
but I'm going to close us out. Thank you so much, everybody, for checking out this episode of the Nightmares Podcast. You can find us where all podcasts are available: YouTube, Anchor, Spotify, all that great stuff. And of course, if that too, and if you are watching us on YouTube, if you could be so awesome to stab that like button, smash that subscribe, and click that little dingy bell to be notified every time we drop amazing content right here on MHN. And hey, guess what? You can also find us on all of our social media as YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Slatter, the app for all things horror. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on the Nightmares Podcast. Bye, guys.